Is Bob Schroeder from Hillside Christian Church. Bob, thank you.
Join me in prayer, please. Father, we do come grateful today, as we always should be, for what you bring to our lives through our faith. So we come today just saying, please bless this time, bless these people, those who serve, who give, who love this city. And we ask that spirit of grace and truth always permeate. And we thank you through your Son. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Bob. Would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we do public address, we're going to pause for some introductions, so I'll pass the microphone to the city manager.
Oh, so we've got our water conservation mascots. We want to encourage our community to conserve water at every opportunity possible. And we had a, Jennifer, do you want to talk about the process by which we named our mascots? We've got Oga. Who wants to guess what Oga's the male mascot in yellow. And our female mascot is named, can anybody think of what it is? Lala. Yeah, we've already put it out on so we got Oga and Lala. So Jennifer, Director of Utilities.
Thank you. So a few months ago we had a naming contest that was with...
Director of Utility Billing. Sorry, we're going to be introducing the Director of Utilities here in a minute.
No problem. So a few months ago we had a naming contest that involved city employees to name our water conservation mascots. We got a lot of names coming through. Some of the names...
Ms. Jennifer, can you pull your mic a little bit closer?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is that better?
I think so.
Okay. So a lot of the names coming through, we had Boots and Shoonie, that was from Maria Hernandez in Parks and Rec. Splish and Splash came from both Catherine Massey and John Mejia. Catherine is in Parks and Rec, and John Mejia is in Transit. And then our winner of this contest, the naming contest, was Cindy Perez from our HR department. And I think, is Cindy here? Okay, so Cindy's here. But we have just kind of gone through the process. We are relaunching our Water Conservation Committee. So these will be our new water conservation mascots. We look forward to being out in the public more. Our first event that we had was at State of the City, and we got a lot of positive feedback from not only the little ones, but also from the older people in our community, our adults in our community. So we just want to continue to spread water conservation within the community and let people know how precious this resource is.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer, for your leadership. Nice to meet you guys.
All right, we also have a couple of, anytime we have key employees hired or promoted, I like to point that out to council just so we can recognize those key personnel and also just kick off their time in that new position in the best way possible. First one we've got is our Director of Utilities. John, come on up to the microphone. This is John Collins. He is a professional engineer. John is the new Utilities Director for the City of Amarillo. He's responsible for water production, distribution, wastewater collection, water reclamation, and the environmental laboratory. So a huge amount of responsibility. It's our key resource here in the City of Amarillo. We've talked about water rights. We're going to be talking about it more here in a minute. But this is... And he's also going to be managing our new AMI project, the Automated Metering Infrastructure Project. John has a BS in Mechanical Engineering from LSU, is a licensed professional engineer in the states of Louisiana, Nebraska, and Texas, accumulated expertise with most types of public infrastructure over a 4-decade career, and has headed several major performance and infrastructure improvement efforts. Began his career with the Louisiana Facility Planning and Control, focusing on government buildings, moved to Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development, where he worked in several positions overseeing utilities, roads, drainage, traffic, railroads, fleet, telecommunications, buildings, emergency services, and various other functions. After retiring from the state of Louisiana, he became the city engineer and public works director for the city of Grand Island, Nebraska, where he was responsible for all of the city's engineering activities and for managing public works' 8 divisions: administration, engineering, fleet services, MPO, streets and drainage, solid waste, transit, and wastewater. That's a lot of information. That's a lot of credentials. The reason and sometimes I will condense as I read through qualifications, but this is such an important position, and John is so well qualified and such a perfect fit for what we need here in the city of Amarillo. I wanted to go through the entire list of John's accomplishments, and because I'm excited for John to be here. This is his day 2. I doubled it. I cut his time in half, but this is day 2. So he's brand new with the city of Amarillo. We are really excited to have him. We got a lot of operations that are directly suited to his expertise. So if y'all have any comments for John or not, we can just say welcome, John. But
John, welcome. We really are glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks very
lots
much.
of important things, tasks
coming to us
on your
most
list.
recently from Nebraska, he's excited about our warmer weather.
Are you a Cornhuskers fan? Where's your college football loyalty? That's something we all want to know.
I spent my first 50 years in Baton Rouge, so that'll tell you.
Okay, yes.
And I was not permitted to discuss football by the mayor when I went
To Nebraska.
and that year, my first year, was when LSU took number 1. So
Okay, well, we value free speech here, so we might not root for your same team, but we're all about college football diversity in our city, so that's good.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome, John. We're glad you're here.
I had a dear friend in the Navy who was an LSU grad, and I was with him in some places when LSU won the national championship, and he was insufferable. So just so you know.
I still am.
All right. Our next one is our director of IT. Missy, are you around? There she is. Missy Tucker. Y'all recognize Missy. She's been with us for, Missy, 6 years or so? Well, it says it right here. So I'm going to just go ahead and read instead of guessing. With over 20 years of IT experience, Missy brings a deep technology and leadership background from the private sector, much like Rich, who also brought us a lot of expertise from the private sector. Most recently as the Director of Global Infrastructure for GameStop. Missy has served as the Assistant Director of Infrastructure of IT for 6 years and has driven much of the progress in IT and across city departments. All of our directors know and appreciate the expertise and knowledge that Missy brings to the job. This is a natural progression for her. We're so excited that she's committing more time with us, hopefully, and I'm excited about what she's going to bring to the team, what she's already brought to the team. So congratulations, Missy.
Missy, we're glad you're willing to do this. Thank you.
Yeah, much appreciated, and I'm looking forward to it.
We know you'll do a great job. You've already proven that.
Yeah, we've all seen the risk that organizations run, and there's probably no larger target than governmental entities. We have, we're arresting hundreds of thousands of malicious attempts on us a day.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes,
I thought it might have gone into the millions, but it's important that we have highly qualified people running these operations to make sure that we can safeguard the public trust, and data is one of the biggest things that we can do. We have lots of important information that we need to safeguard. So thank you, Missy.
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Done?
I appreciate the largesse of council letting me introduce those key team members. And as we continue to do that, in the past and going forward, I appreciate y'all's time doing that.
Yep. We think you've built a great team, and we know that John and Missy will be great additions. Missy in her new role, and John new to the team. Okay. I'll pass it to our city secretary to moderate public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for participating in today's City Council meeting. Your input and your opinions are important to us, and we are glad you are here to share them. At each posted meeting, we invite our fellow community members to address City Council regarding posted agenda items. Every speaker has 3 minutes to address Council. At the end of 2.5 minutes, you will hear a warning beep alerting you have 30 seconds left to wrap up your thoughts, and we ask you stay within your 3 minutes allotted. Speakers are asked to limit your comments to items on today's posted agenda. We have several public hearings on the agenda as well today. If you are here to speak on an item that has a public hearing, we ask that you make your comment either during public address or during the public hearing, but not both, in order to help us keep accurate records. It's your decision at which time you wish to speak. When you come to the microphone, please state your name, whether or not you live inside Amarillo city limits, and please state if you are speaking for, on, or against the items you're here to speak on today. Again, thank you for being here to share your thoughts with us today. Our first speaker is Noah Dawson, and on deck after Noah Dawson is James Skank.
I have some handouts.
If you'll hand them to the officer.
I also want to say I'm going to be speaking on the public hearing for 3A, but my comments at this time don't pertain to 3A. All right. Just one moment. Noah Dawson. I'm still living in Amarillo. First, I just want to play this recording.
I move to approve resolution number 09-13-22-1, which is adopting the policy recommending for inclusion in the 2023-2024 City of Amarillo legislative policies. I move.
That was audio of a motion made by the Mayor Pro Tem during the City Council meeting on September 13th. According to the Amarillo City Charter, Section 2-2-1-E, proceedings of the City Council shall be governed by and conducted according to the latest edition of Robert's Rules of Order as modified by the City Council unless in conflict with this section or with applicable state law, end quote. The City Charter doesn't offer any modifications relevant to my remarks today. Section 10.9 of Robert's Rules, pages 95 to 96 for those following along with the book, states, quote, if a main motion is adopted, it becomes the officially recorded statement of an action taken by the Assembly. A motion should therefore be worded in a concise, unambiguous, and complete form appropriate to such a purpose. End quote. However, the relevant section of the proposed minutes for the September 13th meeting, which can be found on pages 13 to 14 of the online agenda packet, read as follows, quote, Item 2D, Mayor introduced an item to consider a resolution adopting state and federal legislative priorities for the City of Amarillo. A motion was made to approve the following captioned resolution by Mayor Pro Tem Powell, seconded by Councilmember Sauer. Resolution number 09-13-22-1, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Amarillo adopting state and federal legislative priorities for the 2022 and 2023 calendar years. However, no motion was ever made on a resolution adopting the state and federal legislative priorities for the 2022 and 2023 calendar years. The minutes should instead reference something along the lines of the Council approving a resolution adopting the policy recommending for inclusion in the 2023-2024 City of Amarillo legislative policies. I'm aware that doing so would sound nonsensical, but that is because what this council did was nonsensical. To my mind, the most generous interpretation of the motion would imply a resolution was amended by the motion making the priorities valid for the 2023 and 2024 calendar years instead of 22 and 23. At the very least, any actions taken to promote the priorities before January 1st of the next year would be plainly illegal. I plan on contacting all state and federal legislators to encourage them to disregard any attempts to communicate regarding those policies. A mistake was made on the agenda, and instead of being patient and taking the time to do things right, 4 of you decided to rush ahead. The proposed minutes are inaccurate and must be amended before approval per the city charter and per Robert's rules. After all, I've heard the city suddenly has a newfound appreciation for actually doing things right and paying attention to technicalities.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson. And our final speaker today, James Skank.
I'm going to have to play that back to catch up with some of that. Anyway, James Skank, City. I want to speak on future agenda items as well as our public comment time. And one other thing on the consent agenda, once again, we have a pretty long consent agenda. In excess of over $4 million is being spent at that time with I've seen no conversations about the streets and the mowers and the golf carts, and not that it should be, but I think it should be. I think it should be. I think we should have discussions about what you're spending it on, even though it's brief, not in a consent thing where most people don't even look at and they walk on through. I noticed that Mayor went down to Texas Tribune, and I would appreciate this being on the agenda at some time where you spoke down there. And it was an interesting topic to me because you had three other mayors with you, and I'd love to hear it if you know of an access to it that I could see what y'all were talking about. The part that concerned me is you were speaking on we own the city. And I'm going, this city, we own this city, wherever I guess those people were. I am diametrically opposed to that comment unless I hear further explanation, because the owners of this city is the citizens, which you constantly hear me rail about, and it's the citizens at the top of the organizational bracket. But it said in there with a newfound power and enjoy endless battles with the state. Well, the state is actually having to battle with municipalities too, with runaway type of ordinances and stuff that impose excessive taxes and push people back, and government becomes bigger at this level. And you know, like I've always said, all good government begins at this local level. So does all bad government. And when you start doing things that the people are voting against, you're losing the citizens' trust. And when you start doing that as city leaders, there's a big disconnect from the consent of the governed, which you can see throughout the citizens if you're watching certain people, because there might be certain cliques that you're in that, oh, you're doing okay. And then on the petition qualifying thing, I wish there was one thing in there that when Stephanie refused to submit this petition that came up, that said on the affidavit, if you have such a critical issue on the affidavit as to have a number of signatures listed on that front page, then it would be legitimate for the city to provide that legal affidavit to anyone that seeks petitions and say this has to include this and this and this and this. Because what you basically did there was we attached affidavits to our particular sheets that had the signatures on it, each individual collector. So you all took exception to that, and as a result, y'all know it's out there. You act like they don't, but you know it's out there. 12,575 people signed that.
Thank you, Mr. Skank. Mayor, this concludes public address.
Item 1A on the agenda is to review the items in your packet, Council. Any questions up front or any information that you need before we start? Hearing none, item 1B is to discuss the solid waste update. Mr. City Manager.
We've got Donnie Hooper, Director of Public Works, to present the item. This is going to be a recurring item for the duration of the period that we are, at council direction, for the duration of the period that we are not able to do two pickups a week. Don?
Thank you so much, Mayor, Council. I want to start this a little bit different than I probably ever started any other presentation that I've done here, at least, and maybe even in my career, and that is back on the back row, sitting next to me back there is my daughter, Ella. She wanted to come to council today, but the reason that I brought her today, wave your hand, Ella, so we know who you are. She said, I said, I promise you, I won't make you say anything, do anything, but she really wanted to come and see this function. So on Friday night, the weather was beautiful. It was about 8:30. It was dark outside, and she wanted to go for a ride on our motorcycle, so we went riding around. We came downtown. We went down Polk Street. We went down 6th Street. We went down Buchanan. We went by Hodgetown. And when we got back to the house, the first thing she said was, can I talk to y'all for a second? She said, now she works for environmental health here at the city, by the way. She's 19 years old. She's a brilliant young lady. And she says to me, I am so proud as we drove by that building to think to myself, wow, I work for the city of Amarillo. And she said, I just know that the people that I work with care about everything that they do, and it's so nice to be on the inside to see that. Because sometimes on the outside, at a 50,000-foot look, people may not see it as what we see at a 5-foot look. So I said, I'm going to use that as I introduce this package, because what I'm going to try to do today, and thank you for your request to bring this in front of council today, is take you to the 5-foot level and see what we're doing in solid waste right now. So you can see what we've been doing since we came to you on July the 18th and presented our once-a-week collection. Maybe you get a better idea of what we're doing, and maybe the public would get a better idea of what we're doing as well, because we have spent a lot of time on solid waste over the past few weeks. And we've had some wins, and we know we still have a long way to go. So the purpose of this presentation today is going to be to discuss some of the challenges that we have in solid waste. We're going to discuss our solutions that we've been working on so far, some future solutions as well, discuss some implementation of those solutions, discuss future evaluation of the program, and discuss a path forward. I want to just look back and review the ordinance language again, because I know this is something that was discussed before. In our ordinance 8-3-31, it does say that our residential collection frequency is as required in this article and shall be a maximum and normal of twice a week and a minimum of once per week. And I just want to review that. I know we talked about that last time, but I just want to put that back in front of you again. So a recap of some of our challenges, and this is just really a high-level recap of it. Our staffing level is at an all-time low right now. Our retention of employees is probably at an all-time low right now. Our higher than normal missed services in residential and commercial collections is what brought us here on July the 18th. And delivery of new solid waste equipment has been a challenge for us, as I know that it is across the industry for people that are working in the solid waste industry, as well as just any industry that's getting heavy equipment. So some of the things that we've done since July the 18th of 2022 is on the next slide. And I highlighted some things in yellow on here because I wanted to really talk about those in detail a little bit. The other items, I'll pass through those, but to save time, talk about the ones in yellow. The first thing that we've done is there's a Cdl increase. And in fact, that went into effect. It is in effect now. It'll be on the next paycheck for the Cdl drivers. So our Cdl drivers going from $16 an hour in solid waste to $19 an hour. Now there's a range between 18 and 20 depending on where it falls, whether it's an EO1, EO2, and there's a big conversation we could have about that. But $19 an hour is where that's going to. I will tell you that there have been so many meetings with HR, and Mitchell Norman, his staff, Aaron Palacio, they have been wonderful to work with. And there's a lot of numbers they have to look through, the 2,400 employees and how that all sets in the budget. And they've just done a wonderful job for us. But that we're excited about. We think that that's going to be able to help us recruit some employees and get some Cdl drivers in the seats of those trash trucks. We also have done some research on non-Cdl trash trucks. We know that there are some that are operating within our region. Glenn Lavender, who is our superintendent of fleet, did an extensive search on that to try to find us some trucks. He did find some manufacturers that can do this. They can manufacture us a truck that's non-Cdl, but due to the weight requirements of that truck, we would basically only be able to pick up maybe 8 to 10 dumpsters at a time, which really doesn't do us any good for efficiency. So, but we did go down that trail, and I wanted you to know we spent a lot of time on that. We've been cross-training all of our employees as quickly as we can to get them in any piece of equipment that there is in solid waste that they can run. We did put out a contract for services. We worked with our legal department to build a contract so that we could reach out. There's only 3 providers here, Waste Wranglers, Diversified, and Republic Services, that provide the front load collection services that we have for our commercial services, which were really where we were needing the help. Our residential trucks are the only ones that are equipped to handle the residential 3-yard dumpsters. The rest of the services here in Amarillo, as far as we know, and as the research is provided, the information is provided us, they're unable to collect those residential dumpsters. So that's why we went the commercial route. In that process, Diversified was very interested in doing that. We did send them a contract. They had some questions about that contract. We replied to the questions on the contract, and we have not heard back from them. So we're still hoping that we can get a contract worked out with Diversified. Waste Wranglers was not interested at the time. And then I want to talk extensively about Republic Services and the conversations I had with them, especially over the past 3 weeks. DJ Lee, who is their general manager, they're the 7th largest solid waste company in North America. At first, he said, hey, we can probably bring trucks in. We can probably bring people in. Let me get with corporate. Let me talk to them. And I asked him if I could use this in our presentation today, and he said, absolutely. So after a couple of weeks of trying to get resources here at Amarillo, he came back and said, we just can't do it. We're shorthanded as well. If we were going to get resources here, they would be to help us because they're behind as well here locally. So we went a different route and said, okay, well, how about alley collection trucks? We know y'all have rear loader trucks. Can we do that? Take our rear loader drivers, put those in our trash trucks, our own rear load drivers in our trash trucks, and let them give us some more drivers there. And he said, great, that's a wonderful idea. We'll go down that path. He called on Friday and he said, we can't do that either. They're strapped as far as equipment is concerned, personnel is concerned, and it appears that everybody else is in the same boat. Even with the conversation with Diversified, he said, I know I can probably get you one truck and one personnel, but we're going to have to work through that and see how that's going to be. So again, I'm hopeful that we can move forward with that at some point in time within the next couple of weeks and still get some help from them. We have all of our personnel and equipment. That's the next item on there on the bullets. If you're a supervisor, if you're a coordinator, you're in a truck. If we need it that day, you're in a truck. And they have, one of our coordinators has, we looked back at their time cards and looked at the hours they're putting in. She put in 70 hours in 1 week and did it without complaint. She was exhausted. I know that she was. She was out on Saturday when we were out on Saturday with her, and multiple people have been in that same role. So, but everybody's in equipment. We know that. If you've got a CDL and you're in solid waste, you're going to be in a piece of equipment. We've got some new routing schedules. Those were provided by the management team at Solid Waste, and they did a great job of putting packages together, going from twice a week down to once a week and trying to figure out a way to make that work. And I will tell you that we look back at the results of the program that they put together, and it's been pretty spot on as far as delivering what they said they were going to deliver with that package. They've done that. They built in their routing that they said, we guarantee you we're going to have 5 people a day that are either going to be on AL leave or they're going to be sick, and we have to account for that, so we're going to build 15 routes instead of 20. And they were spot on, because I think most of the time, and I think Alan can testify to it as well, that we have 15 to 16 drivers a day. If we do have 17, we have those 2 over in commercial helping out there. So those numbers were really good that they put together. Mandatory overtime for everyone. Data monitoring enhancements. We have done exactly what council asked us to do last time, and that's to track data. We created new data sets for this plan the day that it went in, and we've still expanded those data sets as we've gone. There's not a day that goes by that I don't look at data from solid waste. There's not a day that goes by that Alan doesn't look at it. So, and poor Miranda is working weekends and everything else to get those data packages together. But it's so important to be able to look at that and see exactly where we're at on the barometer every day with these services. Our weekly status meetings with solid waste, Alan and I personally have gone out to solid waste every week, met with their management team on Mondays. We want their input, we want their feedback, and we also want to give instructions as well how important it is that we're meeting our service demands as best we can. Best practice research with other municipalities. We did call every municipality that we could think of that has comparable services, and even beyond that. We called down into the Metroplex to some cities there, Abilene, Lubbock, and places like that to see what they were doing, if they had any other best practices or ideas they could pass along. But interestingly enough, we found out that their eyes are on us right now. They're watching to see what we're going to do, because we're kind of the first ones that have stepped out and taken a step to try to solve the problem. Previous employment engagement, that was something that was brought up by the superintendent, and he said, can we call employees that used to work for us a couple of years ago, see if they want to come back? They've been successful with that. I think they've got one that's wanting to come back, and that's in the process right now. Just thinking outside the box. Driver reporting and monitoring. When we first started this, just want y'all to know what we went through. We had every driver on every route report to us anywhere where they saw an overflow. And what we defined as an overflow was if the lid was sticking up a little bit, that's an overflow. That's too full. So that we could track every location that those were at, then go back and compare it the next week to the same data and see if we had any trends. See if we had any areas that we would call hot spots that we could go back and say, okay, we either need to evaluate that for an extra pickup, we need to evaluate it for an extra dumpster. Now, you know, those crews are busy and they're working all the time, and to say that they did that 100% accurately every time, you know, it's hard to say, but I want to say that they did. We had radios in my office, in Miranda's office, in Alan's office, and we were taking those notes down of everyone that came in, and we were inputting the work orders from my office into the system so that we could see that. We tracked that for about 3 weeks to see where our trends were, and ironically, what we thought was, well, I'll say ironically, but what we thought was going to happen didn't happen. It was pretty sporadic. We did find a couple of places that had more than one overflow in a 3-week period, so we went and addressed that. We also had, any time that someone called in that they had an overflow, we would add that to that list, put it on there for monitoring so that we could go back and look at that and see if they either didn't have enough dumpsters or if there was just something that was going on that neighborhood was generating more trash than another. And that can happen. We've seen that. And then when that would happen, we would address that either with an extra collection or with an extra dumpster. Let's see. Job description revisions. That's something that we worked with them really hard on. And it's interesting when you start really digging into some of these things. Like we had a 100-pound lifting restriction for solid waste drivers. When you come in to qualify, you had to be able to lift 100 pounds. And we said, why? Why are we having to lift 100 pounds to drive a trash truck? And research shows us that what that rule was made for was when there was hand collection in Amarillo, when they were picking up the cans and manually dumping that, you would obviously need to be kind of hulked up a little bit to do that. So not necessary now. We reduced that a little bit, and that's allowed us to get no one for sure driver over the past couple of weeks. So that is now qualified. We've done every media interview that we can do. If they ask for one, we do it. To put the word out of what we're doing, Communications has done a great job of putting word out as well. We've also done additional collections. I think that's important to note. When we would have a complaint that would come in, we would make sure that we would get out there and address that as quickly as we could. If we had an entire alley that was called in, we would get out there and address it as quickly as we could. The thing that probably didn't happen is not everybody reported them to us, but we did log everything that came in, whether it came to council, whether it came to city management, whether it came to our office, or whether it came to solid waste. We would go in and log that in there so that we had an accurate, and I'll show you later on the slides, that we had an accurate count of how many missed services were being reported to us weekly, so we could track that. Dumpster ratios, we evaluated that as well. And I'll tell you a neat story that happened to me. A lady called one day to talk to me about hers, and she just said, I know y'all are struggling, and can y'all just at least give me one more pickup this week? Well, we went and evaluated her alley, and we found out that she's one short in her alley. So we immediately put a dumpster out there, problem solved. She called us back, and she was so thankful that we came out and did that. She said, oh, well, no wonder we've been full all this time, and now they're doing pretty well. And that happened numerous times where we would go out. In fact, last week there was an alley that we added more than one to, and that was in a growth area where we saw that, as it's slowly grown and there's been houses developed in that area, maybe we didn't catch on and see that there was a need for extra services there, so we took care of that as well. So that's something that's been important for us. We try to do it off a 4-to-1 ratio. There have been a couple of those that we've had to change it to a 3-to-1 ratio just because of the amount of waste that was being generated in that alley. So trying to be real accommodating with that. The next slide is a couple of important things that we're doing now. One of those is that we have placed 23 of our 24 roll-off containers out into the field. There's one lone container that's sitting at the service center, and the reason that it's there is because we're using it to try to modify a truck that can move it around, and they have to have that to put on the skid to make sure that they can get that to work. But we have 23 of those out now, and people are using them. We're emptying them with our knuckle boom trucks. We're being pretty frugal with that. We had those out for National Cleanup Day, and we had a lot of people called us and said, can you just leave those out? And we said, sure, we'll try that model and see how it works, see if we need to adjust them, move them around. But so far, it's working so good. But I think at this point in time, it would be a great chance to insert what the innovation team is doing. And I can tell you that over the past 2 days, I've sat with the innovation team off and on in some training that they're doing right now, and a model that they're putting forward for, and I hope I'm not releasing this before it's time, but the model that they're putting forward for making a citizens convenience center, and to watch that, how that unfolded is just, I know, Mayor, that you came by and looked yesterday too, and it's just amazing what they're putting together. It falls right in line with what we're doing with our Apprentice Program that I'll tell you about in just a second. But I've been very impressed with the ideas coming out of there, and I think we're going to be able to solve some future problems with no doubt, and we're on that. I mean, yesterday when they presented that, I just said, just consider the gas pedal mashed all the way to the floor, because we're moving forward with, I hope you're ready, because we're going to move forward with this idea, and they're ready for that. So there'll be more about that coming out in future days, I'm sure. Our Apprentice Program, I want to talk about that a little bit. That's something that we put together about a week and a half ago. That's how fast we've built this program. And this program basically is this. On the next slide, you'll see that it's designed to allow non-CDL operators to operate and train and prepare to get their CDL in solid waste. We're going to pilot this in solid waste. We worked with HR. We have a policy on how we're going to train. We have a policy on how we're going to operate this program, but basically they'll come in at $16 an hour. We'll underfill the positions that we already have budgeted at $16 an hour until they are trained and they have their CDL, and then we'll move them into that position of equipment operator and bump their pay to that $19 an hour at that point in time. We've also developed a training track where they can train. This is something that we haven't had before, and it's been on the it's been an idea, it's been a concept that I've talked about for a couple of years, but this fast-tracked it, because one of the things that happens to us is in the time where we have so few employees, we're spending less and less time training them when we get them. Having a CDL is knowing how to operate a gas pedal, a brake pedal, a steering wheel, and the truck that you're operating, but actually operating the mechanical devices inside of that truck are internal training processes that we need to be better at. So this program enhances that greatly so that we can train them on site, get them ready to go. When they're ready to go and their trainer says, hey, they're ready for their CDL, we can put them in the program and go get that done. Hopefully in 8 to 10 weeks is what we're hoping. Now, people learn at a different rate, so we'll see how that goes. And we're going to change this as we need to as we go. This is the first time that we've seen something like this. But again, 12 hours a week, they're going to ride with a trainer. So they will actually be with their trainer inside of a trash truck, riding with them in the passenger seat. That's going to be about 3 hours a day that they'll be in there with them, 12 hours a week on their 410s. That instructor will tell them what they want to work on in the classroom that day, what they want them to work on the training track that day, and then they will spend 8 hours a week in the classroom, 8 hours a week on a training track, and 12 hours doing hand collection routes. So we're going to purchase some trailers, some dump trailers that we can pull with pickup trucks, so that we can put those drivers in, assign them a route, and they can do hand collections by truck without a CDL. That will free up a couple of our drivers to be able to move those into side loaders as well. We're on pace to get that done hopefully by the end of next week to get that training track in place. I know that the posting for the job went out today, so it is out today and rolling. We've had a lot of cooperation, and we've spent a lot of fast track time getting that together, but I'm proud of our team for doing that. On the next slide, I know it's a little bit blurry on the screen, but you can kind of see the concept of the track, and it's going to look a little different this on the place we're going to put it at the service center. But basically what you have here is the opportunity for 2 trucks to go opposite ways. You have poly carts for them to collect. You have 3 dumpsters that they can collect. You have 2 8-yard dumpsters that they can collect as well, and then some junk and debris on the outside. So what that lets them do is train in 3 pieces of equipment: a knuckle boom truck for the front yard collections, the side loader for dumpster collections, and a front loader for the 8-yard collections. We also are going to put fence sections, portable fence sections that we're going to stick behind each of those dumpsters so that they can get used to something being behind those. We're also going to place cones for representative gas meters. And then this one is one that I think is going to be a great idea too. We're going to have a power line simulation that is going to be close to a dumpster that's actually going to have a hand crank on it that will allow that thing to sag and allow it to come up. So they'll actually have to observe every day on that track whether or not that power line is low or whether it's in the proper position before they drive under it. So again, this is going to be fluid as well. We'll change this as we need to as we go, but we've identified a location at the service center for that actually has some other obstacles in the way for them to get around, such as there's an old metal building there and some other things that they'll have to drive around. So we're excited about that. Let's talk about data real quick. This is data that we've mined from both the City of Amarillo and our Solid Waste Department. And what I'd like to do is just take you from the outside in. We're going to start with the City of Amarillo and talk about numbers of hires and separations, because it's pretty interesting information of what we're doing at the City of Amarillo. This is not just a solid waste issue. It's all the way across the city. So since July the 18th, the day that we came to council for once-a-week collection, to September 23rd last week, in the City of Amarillo, they've hired 73 people, but we've separated 74. So that's a negative net 1, a net negative 1. In the Solid Waste Department, we've hired 11, but we've separated 15. You get down into the solid waste equipment operators, we've hired 5, but we've separated 8. I got good news there. We've hired 3 this week, and they were in orientation, and I know that we've got 3 that are on the bubble for next week as well. So there could be a 6 swing in that if we got to keep the ones that we have, hopefully. And that's been the problem, is the burnout causes them to leave, and we get a few more, and then they burn out and they leave, and it's just been a revolving door. And we're going to try to get that fixed with this Apprentice Program and some other ideas that we're working on. But look at the City of Amarillo total hires since January. It's 426 hires and 453 separations. That's minus 27. So it's quite a big swing in how many people we've hired and how many we've separated with. And it's just kind of been a sign of the times for us, a battle that we've had to work through. I'm thankful that we're going through this process, and I'm thankful that you had us come back up here today, Councilman, because this is something we need to be talking about. We have all eyes on it, all ears and noses and onto the path, and we're going, trying to solve this not only in solid waste but all the way across the city. So let's dig down in a little bit further. In the City of Amarillo, you just kind of see those numbers again. We're 17.9%, it's 18% of open positions right now. In Public Works, it's almost 30%. If you round it off, it is 30% in Public Works. Then you go to solid waste collections, it goes up to 36%. And then you go to solid waste equipment operators, and it goes to 43%. Then on the next page, this is breaking down the operators just into residential and commercial drivers. It's 52% of our residential drivers and 43% of commercial. And those can be mix-match. We can move them from one piece of equipment to the other, but you see that we don't really have a lot of room to take a commercial driver and put them in residential when the residential drivers are suffering as well. So that's been a big challenge that we've had out there. On the next slide, so how are we doing with this? I know this graph is small, and I apologize for that. I thought it was going to be a little bit bigger than this. But I want you to look at the two graphs on the bottom. This is residential weekly services, and the high point of that graph on the far left side of it is 315 service complaints that we had. We actually started our alarm at 2:39, the one right before that. Then we came to council right after the 3:15 and said, hey, we've got a problem. These are calls that have come into the city, whether it's to the council, to us, to management, whoever they came to, we logged them all. As you can see, as soon as we started that, we dropped that trend down. You see another little spike there that happened where it goes up to 98 in residential. That was Labor Day week, so we had a day off that week, and that put us behind immediately. And you look over on the commercial side, we actually were doing pretty well there until we had a COVID outbreak and an illness outbreak. And then it really spiked that one weekend enough that we really had to sound all the alarms. We worked Saturday, Sunday, all day long until we could get that resolved and get back on track. And you can see that it's trended back down, and we seem to be doing okay with it right there. By the way, last week's number in residential was 30. That's less than 0.1% of our customer base that actually was calling in with some kind of concern. Now, I'm not saying that everyone called in, because I'm sure that they haven't, but that's the data that we have that we had to go by. So that's how we've done with our staffing levels with this. And I bring this chart up because it just shows how critical it is that if we just have one little shakeup, even at once-a-week collections right now, how everything spikes. So it's just real critical how we manage this and how we work on this. The impact of the changes is decreased workload for our drivers. We've had a reduction in overtime. That's been noted. Now, we have not eliminated overtime, not even close to it, but we've reduced it by quite a bit, around 18%. Reduction in leave time requests as well. We've noted that. Our service levels have been temporarily satisfied, and I say that because of the amount of complaints that we're receiving. And I'm careful with that word because I know that our complaints have decreased, but I know that we have an ultimate goal with this council, and our ultimate goal is staff as well. So I'll talk about that in the next steps, where we're at to continue outreach and messaging. We try to do that as often as we can. Evaluate our program daily. We're not going to stop doing that. And hire as much as we can in the situation that we're in. But the ultimate goal is the last step there, and that's to go back to twice-a-week collections as soon as possible. So, but I just really think that in that discussion, we've just got to be really mindful of what situation we're under in solid waste right now and the amount of pressure that they're under with the amount of employees that they have. So I wanted to present this data so that you could see where we're at and know that we're on the same path with you and the same path as your recommendation, Councilman Smith, that we want to get back to twice-a-week collections as quickly as we can and as practical as we can. And with that, any questions y'all might have, I'll try to answer those.
Councilman Smith, do you have questions?
Comments. Questions,
okay.
Yes.
We'll come this way.
I appreciate all this research you've done. It looks very thorough. Have you compared the 19 an hour that you're going to pay now compared to 16 to other comparable towns?
We have looked into that a little bit. We compared it more to what they're doing locally. With the solid waste companies that are here, and it's down at the bottom end of their range, but it's closer than we were before. And like I said, our range is 18 to 20, and most of the average that we found is like 19 to 21. So we're a lot closer than we were before at 16.
So you expect that the 19 an hour will gradually catch on and you'll gain people?
We hope so. I know that the benefits package we offer at the City of Amarillo is wonderful. It's a great place to work, and we think we can recruit people with that. In talking with the other waste haulers, they're struggling as well, even at the rates that they're paying. So, right now it's just right now we're hopeful. In fact, I talked to Mitchell Norman this morning, and his exact words were, "I'm very hopeful about this." And he said, I'm very excited about the opportunities that are coming. He thinks it's going to work. We think it's going to work. And we'll just have to see, but we can make those adjustments as necessary if it doesn't.
I understand it's not just the track, it's not just the city that has a problem. Almost every restaurant says now hiring. They got problems. We all got problems.
Yes.
Yeah,
in fact, the people that we've even talked to in other cities about the same problem, we were asking them what their collection rates were and things like that. They're doing the same thing. They said, whenever you figure it out and you figure out how to hire people, let us know. And some of these are way far away from us, so detached from the panhandle, but they're having the same problem. The Republic is nationwide, and they're having the same problem.
that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. This end, questions? Yeah, Councilman Stanley?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Man, I'd like to say thank you to Councilman Smith for leadership and bringing this back. It is something that we're still dealing with, definitely something that you're dealing with, and something I'm continuing to take emails and phone calls on. I can say that you guys have been very responsive every time I've reached out. You're in the alley, you're taking care of a dumpster. If it's something as simple as a lid that will just kind of keep the flies at bay, you guys are handling that. So I really appreciate you being responsive, but I agree with Councilman Smith here. Like, we're in a little bit of a pickle. It doesn't look like the direction that we're going even has a sustainable outcome with the circumstances that we're laying out. So, for example, I believe we were at 14 of 16 commercial drivers back in July. We're down at 9 out of 16 right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I would like to go back to diversified waste. I did speak with Mr. Brown a couple times. I appreciate you reaching out to him and talking to him. Can you tell me, did you visit with him about residential and commercial, or was it commercial only?
We talked about commercial only at the time.
What was his response in being able to handle the workload? Can you explain on that a little bit more?
Yeah, the comment that he made to me in the original discussion that we had, he said he would love to help. I was glad we reached out, and he said that he knows for sure that they could provide one driver and one piece of equipment at the time. And he said possibly two, but I'll have to take a good look at that. So with that said, we developed a contract and sent that back to him.
What was the contract for? Not specifics, but like, was it for a set route? Was it for a total number of empties? How did you structure it?
Yeah, it was for a set route that would be provided to them 24 hours in advance. I don't have the contract in front of me, but we'd basically provide the route to them 24 hours in advance so they would know ahead of time where they were going to be. We told them that we would keep that route as condensed as possible for their efficiencies, much like our routes are. And we would work through it as well. If the routing wasn't going to work, that we would talk that through. But basically just making sure that they were picking up that route for us, and also making sure that there was some accountability on the other end too, that on our end that they were getting done what we wanted done. So if there was a complaint within that area, and this was one of his questions, was that if there was a complaint that came in, we have built into the contract that if they don't satisfy that complaint within a certain amount of time, and I think that was 24 hours, that they would be assessed a penalty for that. So that was one of the questions he had. But we have to do that to protect our own interests as well, to make sure that our routes are being picked up just for accountability purposes. But does that answer your question, or what all's in the?
It does. And so you are actively trying to procure a contract.
Absolutely. I tried to call this morning, and he didn't. I know he's busy. He's like we are, and right. He's all hands on deck. But I actually tried to call him this morning.
And then, did he happen to tell you if he's short on equipment and drivers, or just equipment?
I've had so many conversations, Councilman, with people that I know. I've had some that have told me they're very short on equipment. Some have told me they're short on personnel, and I'm not sure if I could go back and figure out who said what. But
okay. So, in the relevance of my question here, would we entertain possibly? Well, let me clarify. Do we have 16 front-load commercial trucks?
We have 5.
We have 5
that are in service. There's 5 of them that are out of service. Some of them with major repairs.
So we normally staff 10 trucks. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Our ultimate goal is to staff 12, but we have 10. There's 2 of them that are non-repairable that there have been replacements ordered to replace those to get it back up to 12.
Okay.
There was some fire damage on a couple of them that they could not repair. So 12 would be the max. 10 is what we have. 5 of those are in the shop, so we have 5 operating, and we have 5 operators.
Okay. Well, I'm encouraged that you guys are taking active steps to try to subcontract those contracts. And then I would like to propose, just as a point of discussion to the council, the commercial side is something that is handled privately. Residential is not in town. I do know there are residential, deliveries or services outside of town, but could we have a conversation, and could I get any feedback from my council on long-term, would we be interested in looking at trying to remove ourselves from the commercial trash business and closing out those contracts that we still have in the right way, servicing our customers, but allowing them to be taken over or handed off to a third party, and phasing that out over time so that we could really focus? Because if I look at the statistics that you're showing me, you've got your hands full taking care of what you have to take care of in residential alleys. Having the commercial side, I don't know what the revenues look like from it, but we would still have our landfill, and we still charge on our landfill fees, so we still have, a good revenue source for our city to provide these services. Can you, or would you want to weigh in as a point of discussion today on how the commercial side affects you, positive, negative, or would Mr. Miller care to speak to that?
We've actually been actively talking about, and we can have Floyd talk about it, Donnie talk about it, but we've actively been talking about long-term, where does commercial live in what we're doing, especially if we continue to be in a period of staffing shortage, not just for the city of Amarillo, but for every hauler in the area. Commercial is the most obvious privatization that we would look at. It does support residential collections, so it might have a negative impact on residential rates, not having commercial as part of our portfolio. That said, it is a small percentage of what we do, so even though it is a positive on the revenue side, the impact wouldn't be that much to the residential ratepayer. But we are looking at that. Our challenge is that our commercial partners are going through such similar challenges that we're going through. It might be a long-term goal or a long-term project to work on, but I don't know that we're going to be able to get there in the short term because we've been reaching out to private haulers, and we've been able to get an offer of, I can offer you 1, maybe 2. So they're really the only ones that have capacity to help us, and we have reached out to, obviously Republic has the biggest reach in our area and the biggest capacity to potentially be able to help us. But they're under the gun so much with their current contracts that they don't have any bandwidth to be able to add service or routes. So, Donnie, I may have jumped in.
No, you did not.
But if I left something out, go ahead. But that
well,
is something
the only
we're
thing that I
looking
would
at, and we
say,
would bring to council.
The only thing that I would say to add to that, and we have had those discussions. I mean, we have to. And I didn't bring this up to Mr. Lee at Republic, but he brought it up to me, and he said, really, the only way corporately that we've even been able to have a discussion about helping as if it was a long-term deal. He said, however, take note that if that were to happen, I still can't get equipment. I can't beef up my, we've had equipment that we've ordered that's out a year and a half. It's going to arrive here in November, and they're in the same boat. So they're having to make their existing equipment last longer, and I'm sure Diversified and Waste Wranglers are all in the same boat as that. But the conversations have definitely started on that, at least. You got to start somewhere, talking about any solution and every solution that we can think of.
Well, I do appreciate the conversation that's being had. I think it's a good one. As a looking forward point, I would like some additional information back on what that looks like financially, how that affects positive, negative in your department, what that could look like in the future as far as equipment that we don't need to own, or what that could look like in the way of liquidating that asset and selling that truck to an independent.
Absolutely. We can do that, and the good news is that we're coming back every 2 weeks to give you all an update, unless we were told differently, and we can certainly add that if Mr. Miller wants to do that package for sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem, questions, comments?
No, all good. I just appreciate all of the data sets that you continue to provide, Donnie, so I appreciate you and your team. No other comments from me, so thank you.
Thank you.
Donnie, I just want to thank you for your leadership. There are 16 different tactics listed here that you've been working out and that your teams come up with, and y'all are running each one of those to ground, and they're all still fluid. They're all still possibilities while you're figuring out which ones are working and which ones fit the situation, because the situation itself is still changing for you guys. So I appreciate Councilmember Smith's leadership in coming and asking, could we have this update regularly? I got a lot out of your update today, and it will help me visit with citizens about what you're doing, what's improved, what's not improved, and where we're going on this issue. So I'm really grateful to have the every council meeting update. I thought that was a fantastic idea, Howard. Thank you so much for doing that. Because the truth is, you guys were working on 16 different solutions, but I didn't know that. I knew you were working on things, but I just think that this was a great communication tool. Good job on the presentations.
Thank you.
I wondered, what number should citizens call if their trash lids are overflowing?
378-6813. Did I get it right this time, Alan? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. I told him I was going to memorize that after the last meeting. It was kind of embarrassing. 378-6813. And I'm glad you brought that up. We encourage people to call us because that's how we can collect the best data. We want to be able to go out and look at it. And I might mention, too, one stat that we didn't track, and I wish we would have, and maybe we need to start. We've had several phone calls. I know that I've had some personally where people have said, we know what you're going through. We totally understand. We're fine. We're not seeing any issues right now. How can we help? And I said, well, break down your boxes, and we have those. So we've actually had some good calls as well. We encourage all of it, whether it's good, whether it's you need service, you need improvements, let us know so that we can provide that.
And Donnie said it, it's a positive when we get those calls. Yes, we want to get to where we're not getting those citizen calls. But, for example, I got a call, a text from a citizen, and I could hear the frustration in the text. It was on an evening last week. I sent it to team. Donnie had the dumpsters in question emptied before 7:30 in the morning. It's in an area of very fast growth where a whole bunch of new houses had been built and had been occupied within the last month or something like that. So in addition to getting those dumpsters emptied, we also located 4 additional dumpsters in that alley. And we didn't give them any, it's not a favoritism or anything. It's just we wanted to get to the correct ratios of dumpsters to houses. And with growth that fast happening in those alleys, yes, our drivers are looking for those situations where you've got the ice cream cones on the dumpsters, which is not a fun thing. I mean, when you have that many trash bags in there, he said if the lid's open a little bit, well, the lids couldn't even come close to even closing. But we do need that type of input does help us quickly address multiple citizens' challenges. So when people reach out to us, it is appreciated. We want to handle those with dignity and respect and courtesy, and we've worked on improving all of those soft touch skills to be able to help our community, but also to be able to address challenges where they're popping up. As we're in this situation where we are working as hard as we can, we do need to have that help. It goes a long way. And I was grateful to that person. I reached out to that person in person, telling them what we were going to do that night, and then reached out to them and told them what we did do, and to ask them to keep calling me if they need me.
Mayor, if you'll allow me, I'm going to add something to that I meant to say at the top of the presentation. I don't take any credit for this. The credit goes to Alan Harder and the solid waste management team. They have just worked tirelessly. And any crazy idea I've come up with at 2 in the morning, and that's where most of mine come from. You can ask them. 2 in the morning, I wake up and I'm writing something down and I tell them, and they're like, "You're nuts. That's not going to work." And then some of them really do, but they run all of them to ground. They work very, very, very hard. And some of these solid waste management teams, some of the operators, well, all the operators, have worked just tirelessly. There was a Saturday where I called Alan and I said, "You want to go pick up some trash by hand?" By an hour later, he had a U-Haul trailer rented. Andrew Freeman was with us, and we're driving around town picking up trash by hand. That's what it takes to get it done, and they are providing leadership up from what they're doing down in solid waste, and I'm just very appreciative of each and every one of them. They're tough times, but they're going to make it through. And I told them all, it's just a smidgen in time in your career that you're going to look back on one day and you're going to say, we did it. We made it through that. We made it through that tough time, and now we're better for it. So.
Mr. City Manager, I just want to I want to take a minute to say I appreciate the team that you've put together. I appreciate the leadership that Donnie brings. Appreciate the work and the leadership that Alan brings. I appreciate Alan's willingness to serve on the innovation team. And just the stance that the Solid Waste Department under their leadership has to address these issues. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the convenience center. You highlighted on it, touched on it, but I'm hoping in the next couple of council meetings maybe we might hear some specifics about what that is and how that might impact citizens and beautify our city, keep our city clean. So I'm really appreciating the team that you've put together, and I hate that we're having an issue, but I'm really grateful for the team we have that's working it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie. See you next time, right?
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Item 1C is to discuss the citizen survey.
All right, Mayor. We have Assistant City Manager, Chief Financial Officer Laura Storrs to present the item. Just in way of introduction, we're going to be talking about the very first citizen survey, that's customer satisfaction survey that's ever been done in the history of the city of Amarillo. So it is a big deal, but we need to be doing this year over year over year, and we will be doing this year over year over year, whether it's every 2 years or something like that. But we're going to do it over the long term to be able to make sure that we can track how we're doing and where we're making improvements, where we're having challenges. I'm probably stealing some of what Laura or our consultant's going to say. Laura, take it away.
And I think it's really important to start with the why, Laura. Like, why did we do this?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So talking about the why, we have had departments putting a lot of efforts out trying to survey the community, find out more about what's working, what's not working. But Council actually brought this up, I believe it was in a retreat a year and a half, 2 years ago, which was a little tricky because it was in the middle of COVID, and so a little bit challenging of times, and said we need to look at doing a comprehensive city survey that covers all city services. And so, as Mr. Miller mentioned, we haven't done that in the city of Amarillo that we are aware of. And so we reached out to some groups that do this and have worked with other Texas cities. And I've got Ryan Murray here with the ETC Institute. He's going to give you some information about what he and his team have done for other places, what they've done for us. And as Mr. Miller mentioned, we worked very closely with this group to identify questions that not only would give us information about how our citizens feel about the city and the services they receive, but also that we could use to look at how we compare against other cities here in Texas and across the nation. This is establishing our benchmark year. So we want to see how we compare to others, but then we want to learn a lot this year and grow from this standpoint. So hopefully every 2 years we'll be sending out a survey like this and then seeing how do we measure back to that benchmark year and how are we changing every few years. So with that, I will turn it over to Ryan, and he's got a presentation for us.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager and members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here today. It's my first time in this part of the great state of Texas. It's a little difficult to get here, I must say, unless you're willing to drive. So,
but
I'm
worth
happy to
it,
be
right?
Yes,
Worth the
yes,
effort.
It's very beautiful. I'm happy to be here. Happy to present these results. I'm very excited. I'm always excited about first-time surveys. I like to introduce our firms first to start. ETC Institute's really the gold standard of the leader in market research for local government organizations. And so not only do we administer these surveys, but we administer local surveys to Texas specifically. So we have Texas-specific benchmarks as well as national benchmarks. And what you'll notice from maybe other consultants that you've heard from or other benchmarking sources, these are apples-to-apples comparisons where we've administered those surveys over similar periods of time as your survey was administered to make sure that we're making valid comparisons. So we'll see some comparative strengths and weaknesses in here as well, but really I want to kind of set the benchmark. I think Laura kind of set that tone already. This is the first survey. We didn't know what we didn't know before we did this activity, and it's really important to kind of understand the process, understand the analysis as we put it forth, and then kind of understand next steps as well. So this is really an objective assessment of satisfaction with your city services, and this is kind of the full list of city services that we offer. There's some additional questions in there related to communication, customer service, and things like that, but really this is an assessment. Yep.
Yeah, can you just pull that a little closer to your mouth? Yeah,
All right.
You might have to tilt it or something.
Yeah.
That way our people watching us online can hear you.
Good
Thanks.
deal. All right, thank you so much. Beyond the objective assessment, it's really a comparison tool as well. So as Laura mentioned, we work together to develop questions that were unique to Amarillo, but also to develop those items that we can make direct comparisons to ensure that we're leveraging that comparative research that ETC Institute conducts yearly, and then to help determine priorities. So that's one of the big things. I leave it for last. It's one of the things I'll hit home hardest on during the process of the presentation, is really to let you all know, regardless of how satisfaction would have turned out, whether 100% of residents would have been satisfied in every category on the survey, we still would have developed some priorities to look into, or to develop some service level categories and improvements in. And we'll talk about those as we go through this. As Laura mentioned, this is the first survey conducted for the city. It was mailed out to a random sample of residents. We had online follow-ups as well as some postcard follow-ups to ensure accurate representation throughout the community. The demographics are in the tail end of the report in the charts and graphs section. You could take a look at those. There's also frequency tables, but the key there is that those results represent the community as it relates to Census Bureau statistics. So we're talking about the percentage of male-female breakdown, race ethnicity breakdown, age of respondent, and those types of issues. So this is a statistically valid survey in which all participants were randomly selected. Only one survey per household was included in the database, and the final sampling of the database matches the demographics of the actual community. Now, there were 1,000 surveys, and 1,060 surveys completed, which gives us a margin of error of about 3% plus or minus. That's at the 95% level of confidence. What that means is if we were to have collected another 1,060 surveys 100 times, 95 out of 100 times, we're going to get these same results for the questions where all respondents provided an answer, plus or minus that 3% margin of error. So a little bit of wiggle room here, but a really good starting point, something that I think the city can use to move forward with as a benchmarking. What I want to also do is just show you some of the GIS analysis. So beyond the demographic comparisons that we're making to the Census Bureau to ensure statistical representativeness within the sample, we're also geocoding the results of the survey just to make sure that respondents aren't coming or centered in any one particular area. Now, these dots should kind of be centered around the most populous areas of the city, with commercial and other industrial areas kind of not having any dots. But for the most part, I think we got really good distribution from throughout the city. When we talk about the bottom line up front, overall majority of residents have a pretty positive perception, very satisfied or satisfied with the overall quality of life in the city, but there's some opportunities for improvement there throughout the survey. And so I want to kind of get into those. You can see maintenance of city streets and sidewalks, flow of traffic on city streets, effectiveness of communication kind of driving the overall priorities, with a few other kind of secondary or tertiary priorities sprinkled throughout, and we'll go through all of those today. When we talk about major categories of city services, we asked respondents to rate their satisfaction with all of the items that you see on your list here. Don't know responses were not included in this analysis, but you can see dissatisfied responses were summed. So that's the sum of the very dissatisfied and dissatisfied responses. The full report has a tabular data section in which you can review the satisfied, very satisfied, neutral, dissatisfied, and very dissatisfied responses. We just want to make sure that we're kind of aggregating those for ease of use. Some of those dissatisfied numbers are so small, breaking them out would be difficult to see. But for the vast majority of the charts that you'll see today, anything in blue is more positive, anything in red is more negative, anything in gray is more neutral. Neutral is really a passing grade because we did have that don't know response option. So folks that didn't have any indication or any perceived notion of how a city service should be rated or could be rated, they were to select don't know. Everybody else, a passing grade is really that neutral rating or those grays. Beyond kind of the dot map analysis that you saw earlier, we also shade the city's results based on census block group. So each one of those shaded areas is a census block group. Each census block group is averaged based on all the responses within it, and you can kind of pinpoint problem areas or areas of higher levels of dissatisfaction throughout the city, with some areas kind of shaded in blue out to the left. But really what we're seeing here is higher levels of dissatisfaction throughout the city when it comes to the maintenance of city streets, sidewalks, and kind of other infrastructure when we get into the deeper set of maps. This is something, because it's your first survey, I kind of want to mention this. This is a top priority for every community that's performing well in other categories. So if your police services or other services that are really integral to the feeling of safety or the feeling of community in a city are failing or not performing well, you'll see this item kind of take a back seat. But this was our top priority for improvement, primarily because you're doing well enough or at least meeting those service level standards for residents in other key areas. Traffic flow on city streets is our second top priority for improvement for residents. You can see a few more problem areas here, but significantly fewer dissatisfied areas than we did in the other. And then effectiveness of city communication was our third top priority for improvement. I'll kind of get into this more towards the end of the presentation. But what we've learned with some of our academic research that we're doing with the local university back in Kansas is that communication drives satisfaction at the overall level. So as communication satisfaction grows or wanes or ebbs and flows, so does that with the overall quality of city services. And so we'll want to focus special attention on communication moving forward to ensure that we're informing those perceptions and moving those folks from neutral or dissatisfied to neutral and then neutral to satisfied. In order to come up with our analysis, the actual importance of satisfaction analysis, it's not just the satisfaction of respondents, but also the importance placed on those. And the importance satisfaction analysis balances both of those items. And basically what we're looking at in the next slide is showing those items with below average satisfaction and above average importance. And those are the items that are going to drive overall satisfaction with the overall delivery of city services moving forward. The item here I've highlighted in pink is the maintenance of city streets and sidewalks. It's far and away the most important item to residents. We just need to let them know what we're doing to either combat the issue or what the plans are for the future. And perceptions can go a long way in kind of moving the needle on some of these results. Communication is kind of a key driver or point to that. I've highlighted this a little bit different than you'll find in your report. For the presentation, I like to give a little bit more analysis to this. In the report, it's kind of three categories: very high, high, or medium priorities for improvement. Here, I like to kind of sparse this out into kind of a stoplight or a red, yellow, green type nomenclature. The green items are those items where you're performing well in, and even enhanced or significant enhancements in satisfaction in those areas aren't going to drive overall satisfaction with the city services. Items in yellow are those items that you could potentially see becoming top priorities if we don't address service levels in those areas. And the items in red, dramatic improvements in satisfaction there will show improvements in other parts of the survey later on. Comparative strengths and weaknesses. This is a primary reason that we're hired by communities, is to provide those strengths and weaknesses, those comparative benchmarks. It's one thing to understand that 36% of residents are satisfied with a given city service, but if you know the national average is only 20, then you know you're performing pretty well. In your report, you'll find a full list, full set of charts and graphs with the benchmarks there. Here I've highlighted the strengths and weaknesses as you compare to the Texas average: feeling of safety in city parks, quality of library services, customer service from employees, which is key. That's one of our last slides here. One of the highest notes in my professional opinion on the survey. Comparative weaknesses was kind of code enforcement, some of those perception issues that folks likely don't have a really good grasp on, but in their perceived notion of that item, when rating that item, rating it lower. Condition of landscaping, streetscaping, and medians along city streets, another issue where we don't always identify what's city owned or city maintained, what's not. Level of public involvement in decision making, that's always an item that's kind of difficult to get across here. We see a significant difference or a comparative weakness to our Texas benchmarking there. Same with taste of tap water and condition of your streets. We also have national benchmarks that you'll find in your report. You'll find all of those clustered on charts in your reporting. It's a lot of overlap when we talk about our national benchmarks and our Texas benchmarks in those comparisons. When we talk about public safety services, we also rated a litany of public safety services. I've highlighted the three top priorities for improvement, so you can kind of track those across the next couple of slides. That's enforcement of local traffic laws, which is kind of a difficult one. If you're being enforced upon, there's obviously too much enforcement. If you think that people are speeding down your street at a breakneck pace, there's not enough enforcement. So that's a difficult item. Same with codes enforcement. If you're being enforced upon, your perception's more negative than thinking there should be more enforcement. Efforts by the city to prevent crime, purely a perceptions issue for the most part, and visibility of police in neighborhoods, another perceptions related issue, because as we know through COVID, this item kind of struggled in most communities. Even in Texas, some of my Dallas area clients also struggle with this item most recently, a few cities just south of Dallas there. The issue is that we were at home a lot, probably seeing police officers or thinking we should be seeing them more frequently. The truth is we can't sit outside and watch all the time. So the frequency of police officers in our neighborhood is really a perceptions-driven issue that we can actually communicate with and engage in discussions with residents to let them know what those schedules should look like, how frequently they should be seeing those officers drive down their neighborhoods. We also asked the importance of these items. Those were the three most important items, which really drives the analysis and pushes those items to top priorities for improvement. We did this and same analysis, kind of this back and forth satisfaction and importance for building safety code enforcement as well. This is a more difficult item where we know residents don't have a really good grasp on this typically. Now, some communities are far more engaged, some communities lesser engaged. This is, to me, with the number of neutrals here, the lower levels of satisfaction, it's likely some education could be brought to the table in terms of building safety code enforcement and what the city's responsibilities are, what's an infraction, what's not, and the time that it takes to, or the time that we give ourselves to fix those items or have residents fix those items. Those types of communication issues can then kind of push satisfaction or change perceptions, move the bar for us moving forward. Enforcement of the cleanup of junk and debris on private property, and also the cutting of weeds and mowing of grass on private property are kind of our top priorities for improvement there. Quality of life services, quality of parks in your neighborhoods, and maintenance of city parks. This was really our parks and recreation category. Performed very well throughout, but also the availability of information about parks and recreation activities is also one of our top priorities for improvement. Among the four top importance items is civic center experience, availability of information, which is kind of, again, driving at that communication need for robust communication and education. And then our quality of life services, maintenance of city parks is one of our top priorities for improvement. It's fantastic, though, that you're, I think, almost 30 percentage points. I think it's 27.5 percentage points above the Texas average when it comes to feeling of safety in city parks. So as long as we're maintaining those can continue to be kind of a community gathering space. We talk about maintenance services, adequacy of street lighting, cleanliness of city streets, condition of major city streets, kind of trending with our overall categories of major city services that we saw at the top, with condition of major city streets kind of topping out and the important satisfaction. Now, communication is really the key to success. When we say that, because this is a perceptions-related survey, as we saw in some of those other areas or some of those important satisfaction tables. Not all of the top priorities for improvement are services in which residents kind of have a day-to-day dealing with, or maybe are well educated as they could be on some of those items. So we want to make sure that we're understanding where residents are currently getting their information. As we see here, about half of our residents in Amarillo are getting their information about the city from television news. The other 37% or so of residents, and this is a combined score, so multiple selections could be made, about 1/3 of residents through the website, and then another 1/3 or so through social media, with about 25 of our residents indicating they use that water bill. It's not enough to know where folks are getting their information. We also want to understand preferences so we can kind of start to populate those spaces or close the gaps amongst those areas where we're using and those areas where we'd prefer to be getting information from. And so television news is still at the top in terms of preference, but we see city website jump just a little bit, as well as social media just kind of drop a little bit. So we're kind of in a sweet spot where folks are kind of getting the information where they feel like they prefer to get that information, but we should really be investing in our website or other communication sources to try to drive at some of these perception-related issues throughout the survey. And when we talk about communication, we see waning levels of satisfaction. Level of public involvement in decision-making is really the driving factor with regards to this particular section, with about 2/3 of our residents telling us that they're dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with that particular area. Now, the areas at the top are receiving relatively good levels of satisfaction, but high levels of neutral, which tells us that most residents in the community, and that was kind of shown in the previous two slides, most residents aren't getting their information from the city, which can cause some issues with perceptions and understanding of city services. However, one of the areas that some communities struggles and other communities shine is customer service, and that's a really difficult position. As I mentioned earlier, traffic enforcement can go one of two ways. You think we're not enforcing enough, or we're too strongly enforcing, same with code enforcement. Now, it's even more difficult when your community like Amarillo has, I'm sure, county roads and state roads and federal highways and all of those other red tape items that we're dealing with. So when a resident calls, they might be calling about a county road or something that's not a city-specific service. And so that person's going to leave that phone call dissatisfied. They've either been transferred or given a new telephone number or said, hey, we're sorry, we just cannot help you here. But if you look at these ratings, all above 50%, even at the very bottom, how well your issue is handled, only about 25%, given our margin of error, 1 in 4 calls or 1 in 4 residents telling us, hey, I'm just not really satisfied with how that worked, but a vast majority of residents are indicating that customer service, those forward-facing employees, those employees that touch the community very frequently, those folks are really performing at an astounding level. And what I've noted down there is that almost 2/3, about 62% of respondents indicated that they'd contacted the city during the past year. So these are results from those folks who have contacted the city, who have made that contact, who have firsthand experience, versus some of those perception-related issues that we saw earlier in the presentation. Most residents do truly have a positive perception of the city. I know today I kind of went through the analysis, kind of showing those top priorities for improvements. This is a baseline survey. In future surveys and presentations, we'll be looking at trends and benchmarks more thoroughly, kind of focusing on important satisfaction as kind of the tertiary analysis to that, where we'll want to be focused on how we've changed over the last couple or 3 years and what our benchmarks look like, how our comparative advantages and weaknesses have changed. If the city continues to invest in communication, invest in your website, additional education to some of those top priorities for improvement, we definitely could see a shift in satisfaction in some of those areas in a few years from now. One of the things that I always tell my clients is we didn't know what we didn't know before we did this, and now that we know, we can develop an action plan, a communication plan, and we can address all of these issues, or at least begin to. Now, some communities administer these surveys quarterly, some yearly, some every 2 years. The sweet spot is really that every 2 to 3 year mark to give the organization some time to respond to the data, create action plans, and then act, and then kind of see the fruits of our labor after that. And with that, I'll take any questions and any comments.
Thank you, Ryan. Do we have questions from the council?
You may have said this earlier. How many people filled out the survey?
1,060.
Okay.
And I believe our goal was 800. Laura might correct me if I'm wrong, but that's 20. That's a good percentage above our goal. ETC's been in business almost 40 years doing this work. So when we sample a community like Amarillo, we know how many residents to select to get the given response of 800 was our goal. So the community really showed out and really gave a lot of good responses, which was just fantastic.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Thank you, Ryan. I'm very excited about all this data. I have some questions for the city manager. You might hang around. You might get pulled into that. But I'm just wondering, Jared, where do we go from here with this info? I mean, this is some really valuable baseline information. So one of my first questions is, how do we at the council level know that people who work at department level in the city have seen this information and had a chance to digest it and be involved in making an action plan to improve it?
Well, we'll be working with all of our teams to come up with action plans to address each one of these noted opportunities. I would say that the results of this are pretty consistent with what we had already been prioritizing. You know, for example, in communications, 6 years ago we had one person doing communications. Now we have 7. We have 6 right now, but we have a 7th position coming on in October. And it just pluses up capabilities, whether it's in working on communicating through social media, working on communicating through our press partners, working on a variety of different things that we do through the communications department. Same is true with not public transportation, which scored relatively well, but the condition of our streets and things like that. We worked on that through the PDP process, the Partnerships and Development Progress, Partnership for Development Progress. That's one of the first and key takeaways that we're going to be working on. We brought on a consultant for that. So we are working to address these things there. I don't think there was anything super surprising. However, we want to do a deep dive into the data. We didn't want to jump ahead of council receiving this information too far. So that is going to be job one, or one of our first jobs, now that we've made this presentation to you, to bring action plans that we can work on through each department to address known or revealed challenges, whether it's something we were already working on or things we weren't aware of. I'm not aware really of anything that was a challenge that's something we weren't really already aware of.
Yeah.
So as you have a chance to digest that, where can council be involved in helping you prioritize resources on working on these issues? I guess, if sidewalks and streets are at the top, then when we look at CIP in January and February, it will play into that. Where else? Just help us see where our role is going to be, because you have 8 pillars directed from us as far as strategic vision for the city. All of these things fit under those 8 pillars. So I don't know that you're, operationally, everything that's mentioned in this report, already fits within the vision that's been cast by the council. So what do you need from us?
We will, as we come up with actionable solutions, some of them will be able to fit within our existing budget. Some of them will not. I think especially on very high-ticket items like transportation infrastructure, streets, and other forms of infrastructure, we're going to have a long-range plan that is going to have to leverage a lot of resources to be able to address some of those challenges. There are other things where we're going to be able to make very quick movements, some in communications, some in park services, some in a variety of areas where we're going to have the capacity to be able to make some adjustments within our existing resources. Might need, and I'm throwing out a lot of possibilities because I don't know exactly what the recommended solutions are going to be at this time. But it might be that we can make some mid-year budget adjustments and reallocate resources to reprioritize how we're spending our money. But for sure, the very first opportunity where we're going to be able to make meaningful adjustments in how we prioritize resources is going to be as we go through the next fiscal year's budget. How we prioritize resources is how we prioritize what we're doing for the community. And this is a very concrete, touchable way that we can assess what our community wants us to be focusing on. Some of them we can focus on right away. Some of them are going to take a long-term plan. Some of the ones that are the most challenging are also the ones that are going to take a longer-term plan that will cost money, and we'll have to assess, do we want to create new resources or do we want to reallocate existing resources to deprioritize where we're currently spending money to be able to push resources into those needed areas. All difficult but needed conversations.
Any follow-up questions, Council? Okay, Ryan, thank you very much. Laura, we appreciate your work on this item. There's a lot there for us to work on, but some good news too. So thank you.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Not of him, but of the city manager. When do you think we repeat this survey? 1 year?
Typically, what I've done in previous cities is we would do a customer satisfaction survey every 2 years. We can discuss, and we'll work with our consultants to discuss the merits of every year and every 2 years. Sometimes you don't have enough time to make change when you're doing a survey every single year, so you don't have enough opportunity. It's like having a meeting to discuss project progress every day. It might be one of those projects where you only have significant progress every 6 weeks. So discussing it every day would be too frequent. So in many cases, making meaningful progress on some of these things is something you can measure and see on a 2-year basis. And that's why most cities, tell me if I'm wrong, most cities do it every 2 years?
Yeah. Most cities will do it every 2 to 3 years. Some are on a 5-year scale. Only the cities that really have the built capacity and the staffing to handle the data are doing it every year because, Mr. Miller is correct. You get the data, you begin to analyze the data, you work with departments, you work with council and stakeholders throughout the community, you develop those plans. Well, that'll take 3 to 4 to 6 months to kind of develop those comprehensive plans and then put into action. You're really only giving those plans 16, 18 months or so before you readdress and then take the pulse again of the community. What I'd like to say additionally is that this is one piece of a huge puzzle that city staff and department directors are constantly putting together. These are perception-related issues, and if you look through the survey, there's a lot of items that I think residents are just generally uneducated on from time to time, and so their perceptions are going neutral or dissatisfied or, a lot of those items. So communication could be a driving force for change in some of those areas, but it will just take year after year after year of trial and error in some instances, and then touching base every couple of years. Our communities that have really bought into the process will do it more frequently, but they've built the capacity internally to handle it versus other communities that I think take a better approach if they've not got the staffing, which is kind of an every 2-year assessment working in the interim to make change.
And we haven't made a concrete, really even had the internal conversation about how frequently do we want to have it. I've talked about what I'm used to, but as he mentioned, there's a wide variety. I want to make sure that as we're doing this, given council support to continue doing customer satisfaction surveys, we want to make sure and do it with a frequency that allows us to continually reassess where we're going and make adjustments. We don't want to do it so frequently that we're not getting good data or that we're not giving us opportunity to make meaningful change in those areas where we need to make change. So I gave you what my past experience is in cities where I've done customer satisfaction surveys, but as was mentioned, that's not a rule It's just what worked in the cities where I worked.
Well, and I wanted to state, Ryan and his team, how long have y'all been working on this survey for us? It's been several months now. So it's not an overnight process either. And in some of the items that we did see some priorities, you all as a council have already started putting resources there. One is parks maintenance. There was a significant change in the budget dollars allocated to that area in the current budget year. Well, those changes don't happen overnight. So you all have put more resources there. Those things have started while a customer survey was going on. So those changes were happening as they were being surveyed. So by the next time a survey comes around, there may be a significant change. You also have put more resources towards communication, but again, those things don't change overnight. They take time. So I think you all have already started some things, and then with PDP and getting a consultant to come help us with that, I know streets is going to be a big area, and so I think you all have already started helping us lay the groundwork for what we're hearing from the community. It just takes a little bit of time for us to get that implemented. I certainly think, every other year would probably be most reasonable, just because it takes time for change to occur. But we will certainly do whatever council instructs us to do. We can certainly do it. And our community should get more familiar with this process as we go forward, with us doing it a little bit more regularly.
Councilmember Smith, do you have a recommendation on that?
Yes. When did you start this?
The contract. It had to have been last spring, I would assume.
Yeah.
So
In the spring.
time for us to develop the survey together, to draft that,
Yes.
to pass it through departments.
Last spring, you said, Laura?
Yes, and that was the first survey, and it took some time because he sent us a lot of questions that we could use, and we had to pare it back to kind of what was relevant to us. The next time, it should go much faster. Do you remember when y'all started sending surveys out? Sorry, I should have been prepped for that, but it's been several months.
When citizens think, when did you start this process? It's when did you start
Exactly.
actively doing the survey? But there's so much work that goes in on the front end of it, and you're always going to tweak, that question base. But now that we've got a baseline to work on, we want to keep asking those same questions so that we can see movements over time. Now, we might add in new questions to be to reflect priorities that we're working on that were not asked previously, but we usually won't take out questions that we've asked before because we want to see how those things trend over time. But like you said, we started with them when we contracted with them early last year. Then we went through the question creation process. Then they went through the actual
Over the summer.
Conducting the survey over this summer. So it's a long process.
And then one other piece. This might be helpful. 2 years ago, I contracted with a large city in the Rust Belt. I think that's about as vague as I'd like to be. They signed up for a 5-year deal. Their idea was to develop 5 surveys and then redo the agreement. And so we would just have a continuous year after year after year survey. We did the first survey. It concluded towards the end of 2021. I presented just after the first of the year. We worked on some of the results. I conducted some focus groups. We started to design a second survey, and we kind of hit the same exact timeline that we were on previously, but none of the department directors had seen or developed any action plans for any of the data. The city was moving too slowly. So we created a survey. Contractually, we're going to create a survey. We're going to administer a second survey, but it is not a community survey, only because the city decided we can't respond to the data that we've got. There's no reason to collect again, expecting different results. So it just goes to show that it kind of depending on the pace of the municipality, every 2 years is kind of that good middle ground, but even every 3 to 5 is also acceptable, depending on how quickly you can move and really inherently bring in that data, internalize it, and then kind of push out action on the other end.
To finish my point, I would say I'd like to get results prior to budget time. Not only the council's budget time, but staff budget time.
So like the next customer survey that we do, start it late fall, early winter, so that we have that information so it can be included in the next budget cycle? That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Absolutely.
We can
yeah,
make
we
that
could do
adjustment. That would be an 18-month wait, or a little bit shorter waiting period than normal, just to set our new
Realign it.
budget, our new survey period a little bit earlier in the year. Because I hear what you're saying. Right after we do the budget, we get the customer satisfaction survey, so it's a little backwards.
But what's interesting is we're about to start on the next year's budget. So
Right.
this timing actually doesn't, it meets our goals pretty well, but we'll push it a little bit further just so to maybe give the new budget money to a little bit more time to get going before survey goes out. So appreciate that recommendation, and we can certainly work on that timeline.
Anybody else a comment?
Yeah, I just have a comment, Mayor. And what I'm sitting here thinking about is we can be successful and improve our city services if we involve our city employees that are on the front line, that have the first contact with our customers who are the citizens. If we can involve them, from start to end, they need to be involved in the entire process as we go through this, because they're the ones that really have the first contact with the citizen as far as an issue or a problem is concerned. And so we need to pull them in now, and these are the frontline employees.
Thank you for that comment. Okay. Well, we really appreciate the work that you did on getting this survey put together, Laura. It is a lot more work the first year, so thanks for doing that heavy lifting. Jared, this is good information. Definitely be used in the next budget cycle. Okay, moving on to, do we need to take a bathroom break? Y'all want to keep going or take a break? Keep going? Okay. Item 1D is discuss the city plan committee selection process. Mr. City Manager.
All right, we've got Emily Kohler to come up and walk us through this. We're calling it the city plan. Council has authorized money in this upcoming budget to do this process, or in the budget to do this process. So, Emily, take it away.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We are making progress on launching what we had previously been referring to as the comprehensive plan. So, yes, we're proposing that we call this city plan, Amarillo City Plan. We think that's a little bit more engaging and also speaks more to its purpose of city building and working on the policies that affect growth and development. And we are planning to launch the first public engagement activities the week of November 7th. So the next critical step is getting our steering committee in place. And so today we want to ask for specific feedback on the composition and the number of citizens that would serve on the steering committee. And so that's what's on the slide. This is an outline. It kind of follows what was done the last time. We've also provided kind of a first draft list of possible names that you have in front of you, but I think what we'd like to recommend is that we get the feedback on the organizations that you want represented and the number of people serving, and then we would revise that list of names to follow these different organizations and include all the names of people serving on those boards and commissions, and also highlight the names of people that have mentioned that they're interested, and then place this on the next council agenda. We just have October 25th as kind of our deadline, so we're ready with the steering committee to begin those meetings in November. So what we've outlined, if we follow this is about 20 people. And the 2010 comprehensive plan, there were 21 members that served on that. So these are all the organizations that have something to do with growth and development in the city. And then also recommending that there are residents from the different quadrants that could help represent the geographic diversity, and then subject matter experts in real estate development and building. And we also think it might be a good idea to overlap those particular members with the PDP committee, because there were so many conversations during PDP that were like, well, that's kind of a parking lot item for the city plan, the comprehensive plan. So I think there's a lot of value in continuing with some of those members if they're willing to serve. So it would be 2 Planning and Zoning Commission members. We actually have 2 that are interested, that have already expressed interest. 1 from Landmarks, Historic Districts, and Downtown Design. We're suggesting that someone from the council serve on the steering committee. I think that would help provide a more direct way of communication, like how you report on from the outside boards and commissions that council members are serving on, versus waiting months at a time for a consultant presentation. It would just allow, again, a more direct line of communication on the process. Parks and Rec, 1 member. The Community Development Advisory Committee, 1 member. Our downtown organizations, Center City and Downtown Amarillo, Inc. Our neighborhood associations, those plans are all adopted as amendments to the comp plan. Like those are important implementation tools, really, for the plan. So depending on how many people you want total, there could be 2 that generally represent neighborhood priorities, or 1 from each plan area, and there are 4 of those, and then a resident from each quadrant, and then potentially 4 from the subject matter experts or the PDP. And also, we don't have AADC on here, but that might be another organization that is very involved with growth and development that you might want to consider having a formal place.
Council feedback to Emily?
Yes, ma'am, if I could. I would be interested in seeing if you guys would be agreeable to adding 2 more to the total. That way we would have 6 under real estate development or building industries. And I think it'd be helpful to have 2 from real estate, 2 from development, and 2 from the building industries versus the 4.
What do you think about that, Council? Any concern about that?
No. Okay. And then I would like to volunteer as the city council. I only get to sit on 1 board currently, and so be happy to volunteer my time to sit on this steering committee.
Thank you for that. I would like to recommend that we go maybe up to 30 people, just seeing how we set quite a few people on PDP, and then we had 1 person die, we had another person get sick. So I'm wondering if we're kind of aiming for a good, strong working group of 20-ish, maybe we should target naming 30 people. What do you think about that? Anybody have a concern there? The other thing I like about that is it divides evenly by 5. So in the past, it has worked really well for council to provide a list of names. So for place 1 to say, here's 12 names, knowing that we were going to look kind of for 6 out of that list to build the committee with. Then each of us knows that names that we're submitting are getting compiled and put into the committee. Okay. So I would throw that out there, that we actually take place 1, Councilmember Stanley's suggestion to change that industry reps. I'd like to add Elevate Amarillo with a rep, just based on our conversation from a couple of weeks ago, and look for a number of around 30 people. So I would like to ask that the council submit a list to Emily of 12 people that and it can be off of this. Thank you for getting us started. That's so helpful. But then there might be other people that you had thought of, and then ask you guys to build us that committee based on these targets and see how close we can come. We may have other people who would like to volunteer as far as council members, so let's hold off on that one and let's talk about that as a council. But we can do that when you bring us the committee back to approve, if that's okay. Want to do that when everyone's here.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll expect lists of names
from each of us.
Okay.
Yes, and we're trying to move quickly on this, so
Yeah.
Really, maybe by the end of the week.
Okay. And you said 12, is that what you said?
Uh-huh.
From each of us?
There's actually no top limit, but I think in fairness to them as trying to build the committee, like if you submit only 4 or 5 names, that makes it really hard they're trying to diversify by address where people live, by age, by life experiences, by gender, by ethnicity. So if you give them a very small list, it kind of paints them in a corner. So the bigger the list of people you can give them, the better committee I think we'll get.
I agree.
Okay, good.
And then when we do our homework, we get it to her or you, or
You can get it to Carter if that's easier for you, or Stephanie, or Emily.
and then you'll appoint the committee.
Yes, but I think we'll bring it back for y'all to look at, and just as a discussion item. And then we, as a council, I think, need to select that council member position.
But the list really needs to go back to Emily, correct?
Yes.
That's really the main person.
Yes. Quickly. Okay, anything else? Emily, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Item 1E is discuss an update on the mowing agreement with TxDOT.
Kyle Sneederjohn, Director of CPD&E. Kyle?
Mayor, Council, thank you for having me here. On an annual basis, we participate with TxDOT in their mowing contract. So annually, they basically go out and do a regional contract for this district, District 1, and in that we have 2 line items. That is the mowing for I-27 and mowing for I-40. And we basically get the opportunity in that contract to request supplemental mowings of those 2 corridors of the TxDOT right-of-way, and then through an advanced funding agreement, we pay for those supplemental mowings of those corridors. In the standard contract, they have a suggested number of mowings so that contractor actually can bid the project. And so effectively in their standard contract, that I-40 corridor and the I-27 corridor gets mowed 3 times by TxDOT. Once in the spring, once in the summer, and once in the fall is kind of the general setup of how that contract is set up to work. And then, again, over the last few years, we've executed a supplemental agreement that allows us to ask for additional mowings and pay for those mowings ourselves. In a couple of, actually, hopefully at the next council, I'll be bringing you an advanced funding agreement for the next year's contract. That contract, actually, our current contract that we're under right now, expires on the 30th, so this Friday, and then the new contract starts October 1, the new fiscal year. And so you guys had asked for a general update on what had happened in our previous contract, and so under the contract that we're currently on up until Friday, those 2 corridors, the I-40 and I-27 corridor, were mowed a total of 4 times. They were mowed basically last September, and September of 2021, and then mowed again in June of 22, July of 22, and then just recently here, September of 22. And that was four times under that previous year's contract. Of those 2, the city requested mowing as supplemental twice of those, and so that contract effectively turned into a 50-50 contract. We paid for 2, and TxDOT paid for 2, and that is effectively at the based on rainfall and how the chips fall as far as when the corridors need to be mowed. Under the contract, we do give the district engineer the authority to effectively call off a mowing that is of his 3 that he was going to do in his contract, or then call for a mowing as a supplemental that we would pay for. And so that just kind of depends on the needs of the corridor at the time. We are also subject a little bit of scheduling in that regard too, because it is a regional contract, and sometimes we get rain across the entire Texas Panhandle all at once, and have that need in a broad range for TxDOT. So we do give them a little bit of maintenance authority to work their contractor and manage the contract to the best of their ability. But in general, we've been getting over the last 3 contracts, I looked back, we have done 2 supplemental mowings over the last 3 contracts. And so that translates to somewhere between 4 to 6 mowings per year on the 2 corridors over the last 3 years. So that's what we've been doing. At the next council meeting, I intend to have the advanced funding agreement, which is our contractual agreement with TxDOT, prepared and ready. Those bids they actually bid that on the state letting system, and that cost is a little bit higher than it was last year. It's approximately $30,000 for each of the supplemental mowings that we request, with a not to exceed amount of 3 mowings, so approximately $90,000 in that contract.
Questions, Council?
And what's the basis for the increase? Is it just fuel or labor?
Yeah, exactly. Presumably, I mean, effectively, that's turned out to a competitive bid process, and the bids were about $8,000 higher than the bid from last year. So presumably, yes, fuel cost. The contractors, that was the low bid for this year's contract.
Right. Thank you, Kyle.
Yep.
Thank you, Kyle. Item 1F is to discuss an update on the city's water rights. Mr. City Manager.
All right, we've had a press conference and a number of opportunities to brief council on our recent water rights acquisition. To bring this whole thing full circle, Assistant City Manager and water rights guru Floyd Hartman.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to be here today. I'm here today. It'll be a very brief presentation, but on July 26th, if you recall, that y'all approved the purchase of over 15,000 acres of water rights in Roberts County. So we closed on those. The city closed at last week. September 16th was the closing date. So what you can see here is the shaded in blue. It's very light blue. Is the Mesa Vista Ranch water rights, and you can see it changes to the city's blue. So you can see those are the 15,000 acre of water rights that were added to our inventory. Remember, this is a significant water rights inventory. This is some of the best water rights in the state of Texas, if not the best water rights in the state of Texas. A couple of decades worth of water in the future. Developable after, planned on in 2065. But we just wanted to provide you the update that those water rights deal was closed, and that is now in our inventory. Again, that'll sit on the shelf until it's developed, but it's adjacent to Cremaw and our other water rights. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Floyd? A pat on the back.
Thank you.
This is big. Thank you for the update, and it's great to see it finalized.
I want to thank the mayor and the council for the confidence in me to do that. Thank you.
Appreciate your work, Floyd. Item 2G has 2 reports on it, both of which belong to Dr. Sauer, who unexpectedly couldn't join us at the last minute today. But I'm wondering, Mr. City Manager, if I see Kat Massey's in the room, if she would be willing to give the update for item GI.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Kat, can you? I don't want to put words in her mouth, but Kat, come on up.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. How are you today? It's a beautiful day in Amarillo. I do have The first thing that we have is we have been in discussion with TxDOT on streamlining a process for our artwork that will go along TxDOT right-of-ways, and we have come to a pretty good agreement. We're still in a good document to get this rolling forward. This will make getting artwork on those right-of-ways faster. We won't have to wait 4 months, we hope. So there's been a lot of interest in putting artwork on these right-of-ways, and we want to be able to do that quickly. It's exciting that the library has been gifted a mural by the Friends of the Library, and we are in the process. Amanda and I will start talking about artists soon, and we'll get, as soon as those renderings and everything are approved, we'll get them to you all to look at, and that's an exciting project because it is fully funded. That's funded by the Friends. And then when Michael gives his update on Parks and Rec, it's been a really cool conversation that we've started with Ogallala Life and some partners with Texas A&M, Texas Tech, or West Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Texas Parks and Wildlife, and a citizen liaison about kind of flipping Thompson Park back into its natural habitat. So we will have no-mow areas. There will be water tests. It's a very neat thing. A lot of educational components for citizens to learn about why we're not mowing and why it's important to take the land back to zero. There's a lot of tax dollars that can be saved if we don't mow. So that will be an interesting project that we've started discussions on, and Michael's got a lot of great information on that. Pretty wise, during the State of the City, within those funds, we were fortunate to be able to fund the painting of the bathroom at Sam Houston Park. It was awesome because the community got to help paint that, and I was driving by with my little girl a couple of days ago, and she said, I helped paint that. And so I know that she's not the only one that feels that and is inspired by that. So I'm excited. We've had a lot of people reach out about the bathrooms in their parks, and we're working for different funding sources for those. It was just an exciting opportunity that we had those extra funds left over. So take a look at that. That picture is great because you can see our sculptures somewhat in the back. So that's going to be a fun project moving forward. We recently, the Beautification and Public Arts Board, approved this mural to be fully funded through the mural grant. It's one of our final two. This one's at 109 Fillmore. It was designed by Color Art, and it was installed by Blank Spaces. And the books that you see on this mural will be interactive, so you'll be able to hold your phone up, and it will take you to a story that involves each one of those books ends. And Color Art's doing all the back end of that. I don't know if it's AI or they have great resources for that. So they're very excited, and I think there's talk about doing a little celebration when all of that's completed. I'll keep you posted. And then the final mural grant recipient was Amarillo Little Theater, and this one's on Civic Circle. It was designed and installed by Blank Spaces, and so this one's exciting. The next slide shows how they were kind of feeling it would be interpreted. Little kids are feeling the magic of the theater, so there's a lot of neat things and a lot of people reaching out for more artwork of this scale, and I'm excited about it, so stay tuned for more color in the city. So thanks.
Any questions for Kat? Great report, Kat. Thank you.
Sorry. I just took off.
Yeah.
It's my first report to council. So thanks.
Okay, good report. Thank you very much. And I don't know, do we want Michael to do Parks and Rec? Do you know what Councilmember Sauer was going to say? Maybe let's wait and let Eddie do that one. I just knew that beautification report was pretty straightforward, and it was already in our packet with lots of pretty pictures. I thought we shouldn't wait on that one. Are y'all okay with that, Council?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Item 1H, request future agenda items and reports from the city manager. Anybody need anything? Okay. With that, let's move on quickly to consent then. Anything on the consent agenda that needs to come off for further discussion or questions? Do we have a motion with regard to the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Powell and seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve the items on the consent agenda. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with a 4-0 vote. Moving on. Sorry?
Is it break time?
Oh, let's take a break. We'll be right back in about 5 minutes.
I don't disagree with that motion.
Yeah, okay, good. Free pass.
Cake makes you slimmer on your birthday.
Yeah, right. Okay, I think we're all back and appreciate the break. So we'll start back at agenda item 3A, which is a public hearing and consideration of ordinance number 8017. Mr. City Manager.
All right, Mayor, we've got Brady Kendrick, and we're going to have Brady here for a number of items coming up. So, Brady, take it away.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This item is a public hearing and first reading to consider an ordinance vacating 2 public right-of-ways, being a public street, Southeast 6th Avenue, located adjacent to blocks 354 and 355 of Mears Addition, and the public alley located in block 355 of Mears and Hollins Addition, all additions to the city of Amarillo being in sections 155 and 156, block 2, A&M Survey, Potter County, Texas. The vicinity is Southeast 5th Avenue and Johnson Street, and the applicant is the city of Amarillo. The public alley and street segment proposed to be abandoned are located in downtown Amarillo, and the adjacent land on both sides of the street and alley are owned by the city. The city is requesting vacation of the just mentioned rights-of-ways to create a unified development site for the upcoming City of Amarillo City Hall project. In reviewing the request, the traffic engineer did not express any concerns about the closure of the segment of the street, as the street dead ends approximately a block to the east and is not a through street. Regarding the abandonment of the alley, the City Solid Waste Department stated that this abandonment would not have impacts on any existing trash routes in the area. It is also worth noting that the alley segment in the block to the south of this alley, under consideration, has also already been vacated in the past. The city will be retaining a PUE over the alley to be vacated and portions of the street to be vacated to cover utility infrastructure that will be in those areas. Notices have been sent to property owners within 200 feet regarding the proposed vacations, and as of this meeting, no comments have been received. Considering the above, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the request as presented with a unanimous vote.
Any questions for Brady about this item, Council? Okay, thank you, Brady. With that, we will open a public hearing on this matter. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak for, on, or against item 3A? You'll have 3 minutes. Mr. Dawson.
All right, I just wanted to express, as this has to do with the City Hall project that voters voted against, that a petition showed that there was still public opposition to, that there are still, in my view, unresolved legal questions regarding. I have to express my opposition to this. I additionally heard apparently this is in part related to the drive-through that the new City Hall is supposed to have, which I recall back to when y'all had that ceremonial beginning of the demolition for the City Hall project, when the necessity of the drive-through was brought up by you, Mayor, because apparently the lobby of this City Hall doesn't have enough chairs. And I just have to say, when I don't have enough chairs at my house, I go and buy more chairs. I don't go buy a new house so I can put a drive-through in. I mean, really? I know that there are so many jokes about government incompetence and inefficiency, but yeah, that really feels like something straight out of Parks and Rec.
Is there anyone else present who wishes to speak for, on, or against item 3A? Okay, thank you. We'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion on this item.
Yes, Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 8017, vacating 2 public rights of ways, being Public Street, Southeast 6th Avenue, located adjacent to blocks 354 and 355 of Mears Addition, and the public alley located in block 355 of Mears and Hollins Addition, all additions to the city of Amarillo being in section 155 and 156, block 2, A&M Survey, Potter County, Texas, in the vicinity of Southeast 5th Avenue and Johnson Street.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve item 3A. Any questions or discussion about the motion? All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with a 4-0 vote. Item 3B is consideration of ordinance number 8006. Mr. City Manager.
All right, I got Brady Kendrick again to talk to us, to walk us through the rezoning, the proposed
Oh, sorry, I
rezoning.
think I got that ordinance number. Wrong. 8018. Thank you. Pardon me, Jared, for interrupting you.
Talk about a proposed rezoning and answer any questions council might have. Brady?
All right, this item is to consider an ordinance rezoning Lot 1A, Block 118, Mrs. M.D. Oliver Equals Edition, Unit Number 3, to change from Residential District 1 with Specific Use Permit 78 to Residential District 1 with Specific Use Permit 78A for increased lot coverage, reduced setbacks, and a change in hours of operation. The vicinity is Southwest 25th Avenue and Jackson Street, and the applicant is Gene Mayfield for Amarillo Bible Chair. Amarillo Bible Chair is proposing a change in zoning in order to construct a new 2,800 square foot building on the lot, which will replace the existing 2,100 square foot building that currently occupies the lot. With the existing site plan addressing maximum allowed lot coverage, hours of operation, and because the new building setbacks would need to adhere to current zoning for institutional buildings, an amendment to the current site plan is necessary. The Amarillo Bible Chair was granted a specific use permit in 1988. Currently, the max lot coverage allowed is set at 21%. The new building at 2,800 square feet would represent an increase in 10% of lot coverage. If approved, this increase would result in a 31% total lot coverage. The Planning and Zoning Commission believes that the increase to be minimal and not detrimental due to the fact that residential structures, if a residential structure were to be built on the site, it could cover up to 45%, and an institutional land use not controlled by an approved specific use permit could utilize up to 50% of the lot. Regarding setbacks, the site plan states that all other standards shall comply with the zoning ordinance. With a new building being proposed, setbacks are required to follow those listed for an institutional building. To summarize, a reduction of 10 feet along Southwest 25th Avenue from 25 feet to 15 feet and 12 feet along the interior lot line from 20 feet to 8 feet is being sought. The setback along Jackson Street will increase 5 feet from what is required. They will observe 30 feet when 25 feet is required. To summarize, considering the residence immediately east observes a 12-foot setback along 25th and that an Amarillo College parking lot is located immediately to the north of the site, the Planning and Zoning Commission believes that the requested setback of 15 feet along Southwest 25th is appropriate. Regarding the interior side yard setback, the Planning Commission is of the opinion that allowing an 8-foot interior side yard setback, which is 12 feet less than required, does not create any additional negative impacts on the adjacent residents. This is based on the fact that the existing structure is currently observing an 8-foot setback and that a 6-foot solid wood screening fence along the interior property line will be constructed as part of the project. Considering the proposed hours of operation, this is being done in order to reflect the current Bible Chair's operating hours, which have been in effect for a number of years now, and to mirror the Amarillo College class schedule. Activities in the evening would include night classes occasionally and occasional group gatherings. It was the Planning and Zoning Commission's opinion that the requested change in hours of operation is appropriate given what occurs with Amarillo College classes now on campus. The Planning and Zoning Commission was aware that there are concerns about the architectural style of the building being proposed. However, they are also aware that with the passing of Texas House Bill 2439 in 2019, cities are no longer able to dictate specific building materials, architectural styling, or specific characteristics of the building. It is worth noting that an appraisal from a licensed real estate appraiser was obtained, and the conclusion was that this project would have no negative impacts on surrounding properties if approved. Notices were sent to all property owners within 200 feet as required by state law. As of this meeting, 6 comments in support and 5 comments in opposition have been noted on the request. The primary concerns expressed from the 5 individuals who expressed opposition included the following: concerns about a commercial-style building being allowed in a residential area, concerns that if approved, this would further erode the neighborhood and allow the college to expand further into the neighborhood, concerns that the building was not a good fit for the area and character and would be a negative impact on the historic neighborhood and would not enhance the area. They were also concerned about the scale of the building and concerns about increases in traffic and noise pertaining to the hours of operation. Considering this, the Planning and Zoning Commission is of the opinion that this site continues to be in an appropriate location for a smaller scale institutional land use as recommended by the future land use map and the previously approved specific use permit. Therefore, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the request as presented with a unanimous vote.
Questions for Brady, council?
Yes, Mayor. So did you all reach out to the individuals that had some concerns?
Yes, we had one-on-one conversations with a majority of them.
Okay.
Staff did.
Brady, what's the setback on Jackson Street, the proposed setback of the new structure?
So on Jackson Street, they currently observes 30 feet, and it is actually going to remain at 30 feet, Mayor. And that's actually 5 feet more than they are actually required to provide. The minimum setback for Jackson would typically be 25 feet.
Okay. But the existing structure is at 30 feet. The new structure is going to be at 30 feet.
That's correct.
Okay. Anybody else have questions before we do public hearing? Okay, thank you, Brady. At this time, we'll open a public hearing on agenda item 3B. Anyone who wishes to speak for, on, or against this item may have 3 minutes to do so. If you're here and you want to speak on this item, if you don't mind raising your hand, letting us know that you want to speak. Okay. Oh, yes? Yes, sir. No, you're sure? Okay. Are you guys residents in the neighborhood? Or are you here with the Bible chair?
I'm the director for the Bible chair, and Mr. Mayfield is the contractor.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, great. Great. Well, actually, do you mind coming and just telling us about your project and the impact that it's going to have? Okay, thank you. So way to go, Eric, on volunteering these guys to come to the podium.
Thank you, Eric.
I know, right.
My name is Gene Mayfield, and with Bell Avenue Church of Christ, we oversee the operation of the Bible Chair. And the Bible Chair has actually been on the campus at Amarillo College now in its 50th year. It started in 1972. In 1988, Amarillo College wanted to build a large parking lot north of the school, and that's where we were located, as well as us and other buildings. They either came and bought your property, or in our case, they traded us this house that we've used since 1988. So we've been in the house 34 years, and during that time, Amarillo College, as you're aware, has grown, and the facility has become harder to maintain, has 3 different levels of floors, so it's harder for the students to get around. And because of Amarillo College growing, the number of people in the facility has grown. So we need more space to be able to adequately be able to handle the kids that come on the property of the Bible Chair.
Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Mayfield?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Mayfield, I just, on behalf of residents who have some concerns, the setback is going to be the same on Jackson Street. So like if I'm a resident and I walk that street or I drive that street, it's going to feel very similar because it's not like you're going to have a commercial building jutting right out to the sidewalk.
And we intentionally wanted to line it up. We don't want it to be a negative for the neighborhood. None of the neighbors on Jackson were the ones who complained.
Okay. And as far as design of the building, were there anything in your conversation with the neighbors that you've kind of tried to meet in the middle or listen to their concerns and address their concerns?
They really didn't give us any ideas of things they had. They just don't want us there, is what they really indicate. One of the parties at the first meeting we had indicated they wish Amarillo College would close that and move somewhere else. So it was kind of awkward from that standpoint. From there, yes.
Okay. And then just as far as extending the hours past 5 p.m., can you just give us a little bit of information about what activities you plan? I mean, I would think in the neighborhood setting, people might be concerned about worship music if you were going to have an outdoor meeting or, if you were going to have a band or something going past 5 o'clock that might interfere with people being at home at night.
We never have. The facility is set up and the hour changes is to correspond with Amarillo College. Amarillo College actually sets the classes that are taught. We don't set them. And they set the time of when they're taught. So that allows us to be able to have classes in the evening for people who can't be there during the day, and that matches Amarillo College's hours from 8 to 9:45. Okay. There are occasions where it's used by local youth groups, not with bands and things. That happens very seldom. Normally, all of the activities are involved with all the Amarillo College students. You have the college that teaches Bible classes, teaches philosophy classes. The Bible chair pays for Merle's salary. It doesn't cost anything for Amarillo College, so there's no cost out there. And the other thing is I'll let him tell you about it, but it's an organization on campus called Kappa Chi. And it's one of the larger groups of kids that signed up to come together once a week to have a meal and to have a devotional. And that's during the lunchtime.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful. Helps me make a decision and still consider that the residents' concerns were heard. So I really appreciate your coming to the podium. Any other questions from the council? Okay. Thank you.
You want to hear from Merle?
Only if anybody else you want to volunteer? And Merle, only if there's something that you really wanted to say.
I appreciate the council and your consideration of our proposed building here. The directors of the Bible chair before me, I came in 2017, saw the need for a more adequate building. We're in a house that's been remodeled, and we wanted a better facility. Over the past 3 years, we've been doing fundraising to provide the cost for this. And we estimated it to be somewhere between $145 and $150 per square foot. We have raised, we believe, the total amount, and that's $408,000. So it will be fully paid for. In addition, we have churches throughout the Panhandle that support us on a monthly basis. As Mr. Mayfield indicated a moment ago, the college cannot, because of these being religion classes, they cannot use tax money to pay for those. But we have a very adequate and strong financial base with 14 churches plus some individuals who provide the monthly support for that. I do want to add that we just had SACS on campus, and that's Southern Association for Colleges and Schools. And we received the report before they left. They were here from Sunday to Wednesday. And out of 72 areas that they investigated for the college, they did not have one single recommendation to make. And the head of that committee was Dr. Smith from Alabama. And he told Dr. Larry Hart that in his tenure, he had not had one opportunity to tell a school that we have no recommendations. This was a 10-year accreditation renewal, and we just received that. I say that in praise of the school and the administration. We are a part of the school. We're separate financially, but we are a part of it in that we provide a degree program in religion for our students. So I fully support it, and I am proud of what AC has accomplished in the past. It's a wonderful institution. Thank you.
Thank you, Merle. Any questions?
If I may, real quick, may I get your last name, Merle, for our record of the meeting?
Yes, Worthy. W-O-R-T-H-E-Y.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, council, we can take a motion on this item unless anybody has a question or needs.
Mayor, we need to close the public hearing.
Do we have one? Oh, we have to close the
wanted to
public
speak.
hearing, yes. One more student, of course. Thank you. We saved the best for last, by the way.
Hello there, Council. How are y'all doing today?
Good, thank you.
My name's Eric Sturkey, and I wanted to come here and attest from a student's perspective. You have heard from those, but not from a student. When I was first attending AC, I didn't even know they had a Bible chair. Honestly, it was just a house on the side that just looked like a brighter color than the rest of the ones in the neighborhood. It was only after some persuasion from a few folks who actually knew that that was the Bible chair that I went. They had Tuesday lunch and devotional, as they have previously mentioned. And over a period of time of continually attending there, I realized that it wasn't just a one-and-done thing, and it wasn't temporary. It was actually a community of people coming and spending time together, not only leading in devotional, but also communicating. I can't stress enough that as a student who primarily was just a loner throughout all of his time in elementary, middle, and high school, to come to college and continue that idea until I came to the Bible chair and started branching out, opening up. I've found good friends there. I've met Mr. Worthy, as you have just previously talked to. I've also found love interests. She unfortunately could not be here today because she had classes. And as I said, good friends that I'm still coming back to meet as much as I can. Due to COVID, the place has been shut down, although there have been occasional people to come up and say, hey, how's it going? And as previously mentioned, with the college growing, so too our numbers, and it gets a little bit too tight in there. I pity those who have claustrophobia. So I stand in support of this because we need a bit more room, and we need something that's much more adequate for all student types, not just the ones who are physically able, but for the physically unable. There's a stairway that isn't fully ADA compliant because, well, that was, during the time it was made, not much of an issue for them. But with this building, that'll also be helped out. Right. And that'll conclude my testimony.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you making time to come down here. Any questions, council? Okay. Thank you very much, Eric. Okay, now we will close a public hearing on this matter and entertain any motions.
Yes, Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance number 8018, rezoning Lot 1A, Block 118, Mrs. M.D. Oliver Eccles addition, Unit number 3, in addition to the City of Amarillo in Section 171, Block 2, AB&M Survey, Potter County, Texas, plus 1/2 of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways to change from Residential District 1 with Specific Use Permit 78 to Residential District 1 with Specific Use Permit 78A for increased lot coverage, reduced setbacks, and a change in hours of operation in the vicinity of Southwest 25th Avenue and Jackson Street.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Councilmember Stanley to approve ordinance number 8018. Any further questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with the 4-0 vote. Item 3C, ordinance number 8019.
All right, Mayor, we've got Brady Kendrick again to talk about a rezoning and public hearing. Brady?
This item is a public hearing and first reading to consider an ordinance rezoning 21.24 acres of land, plus 1/2 of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways in Section 61, Block 9, BS&F Survey, Randall County, Texas, and is made up of the following 3 components. Rezoning of a 3.08 acre tract of unplatted land, the change from agricultural district to planned development district 400A for the expansion of development standards, rezoning of a 2.14 acre tract of unplatted land from agricultural district to planned development district 401A for expansion of development standards, and rezoning of 16.02 acres of unplatted land from residential district 3 to multiple family district, from residential district 3 and multiple family district 1 to multiple family district 1. The vicinity is Southwest 34th Avenue and Soncy Road, and the applicant is Daryl Furman for the M-Line Bush O'Brien Silbiaski Trust. The applicant is proposing the changes in zoning to expand recently approved development standards found in PD 400 and 401 to the west, which was recently annexed, and to expand the multifamily zoning within the just mentioned annexed land. PD 400 and 401 are both planned developments for single-family detached homes. Planned development 400 features reduced lot area and lot depth, while PD 401 features lots that have reduced lot width. The area under consideration for the expansion of these planned developments were located in the city at the time the rest of the applicant's land was being annexed, and therefore cannot be included in the annexation zoning plan that was approved during the annexation process. Since annexation, the applicant is also proposing a 0.78 acre expansion of the MF1 zoning that was established to reflect the upcoming development needs. Given the minimal nature of the expansion, the Planning Commission is of the opinion that the change would not impact the character of the zoning pattern that had been established with the zoning plan. As a whole, the Planning and Zoning Commission found that the applicant's request is in line with the approved preliminary plan and the approved annexation zoning plan for the area, and is a logical continuation of the established zoning in the area. Notices were sent to all property owners within 200 feet as required by state law, and no comments have been received as of this meeting. Considering the just mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of the request as presented with a unanimous vote.
Any questions for Brady, council? Thank you, Brady. At this time, we'll open a public hearing on item 3C, which is relevant to ordinance number 8019. Anyone who wishes to speak for, on, or against item 3C may do so at this time. Is there anyone who wants to do that?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Berry, 7207 91st Street in Lubbock, Texas. I'll be brief. This is just a little cleanup like Brady stated. Again, we're excited. We finally started scratching some dirt around out there, so hopefully you'll see some homes pop up. And if you have any questions, be happy to answer.
How many homes, Chris?
Just under, I think, 900, right around 900.
Wow.
And we got some, I may be a little high. It's been a while. I've looked at so many plats, sorry.
Yeah, it's an estimate. We're not going to hold you to it.
Landscape architect stuff kind of working, so hopefully I'll get all the stuff set up with Brady. Had some good public improvement discussions last week with Justin, so getting everything moving in the right direction to get some folks over there.
That's great. Any questions for Chris, council? Thanks, Chris. Thanks for waiting through the whole meeting. Sorry you're at the end. Anyone else who wishes to speak on item 3C? With that, we'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Yes, Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance number 8019, rezoning of 21.24 acres of land, plus 1/2 of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways in Section 61, Block 9, BS&F Survey, Randall County, Texas, being further described as follows. 1. Rezoning of 3.08 acres of unplatted land in Section 61, Block 9, BS&F Survey, Randall County, Texas, plus 1/2 of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways to change from agricultural district to amended planned development district 400A for the expansion of development standards, single-family detached homes with reduced lot depth and area. 2, rezoning of 2.14 acres of unplatted land in Section 61, Block 9, BS&F Survey, Randall County, Texas, plus 1/2 of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways to change from agricultural district to amended planned development district 401A for the expansion of development standards, single-family detached homes with reduced lot width. 3, rezoning of 16.02 acres of unplatted land in Section 61, Block 9, BS&F Survey, Randall County, Texas, plus 1/2 of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways to change from Residential District 3 and Multiple Family District 1 to Multiple Family District 1 in the vicinity of Southwest 34th Avenue and Sunsea Road.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Council Member Smith to approve ordinance number 8019. Any questions or discussion about the motion? Hearing none. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with a 4-0 vote. Item 3D is a public hearing and consideration of ordinance number 8020.
Brady.
This item is to consider an ordinance rezoning Lot 4, Block 23, Sunrise Park, Unit Number 2, in addition to the City of Amarillo in Section 106, Block 2, A&M Survey, Potter County, Texas, to change from Residential District 2 to Residential District 2 with a specific use permit for the placement of a carport in the front yard setback. The vicinity is Southeast 10th Avenue and Inman Drive, and the applicant is Moses and Roses Martinez. Adjacent zoning consists of residential district 2 in all directions and single-family homes in all directions. The applicant is requesting a specific use permit in order to keep a carport within the front yard setback. In order to place a carport within the front yard setback, a property owner must first apply for a specific use permit and then a building permit prior to construction. The carport that was constructed without a permit, and the applicant did receive a violation from the Building Safety Department, and is the reason for the request today. The carport is a custom metal carport that is 576 square feet and is located 9 feet 3 inches from the front property line and 20 feet 9 inches from the back of curb. When driving the street from both directions, the visual impact of the carport is mitigated by existing trees in the front yards of homes on the block. It is the Planning and Zoning Commission's opinion that the carport has minimal impact on the streetscape character and would not be detrimental if allowed. It is worth noting that there are 4 additional carports in the area, 2 of which have permits and specific use permits that are located 1 block to the east of the applicant's home. It is noted that the carport is located on the north property line of the applicant's tract. Typically, a 3-foot setback is required to allow room for maintenance and drainage off the roof of the carport. The applicant did agree that he would modify the carport in a manner with gutters that would alleviate drainage concerns and also ensure there are no encroachments across the property line. Notices were sent to all property owners within 200 feet as required by state law. And as of this meeting, no comments have been received. Considering the just mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Commission believe a precedent has been set for carports within the front yard setback in this immediate area. Therefore, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval with a unanimous vote.
Questions for Brady? Okay, thank you, Brady. We'll open a public hearing on item 3D, which is ordinance 8020. Anyone present who wishes to speak on, for, or against this item may do so at this time. Is there anyone present? Seeing no one, we'll close the hearing and entertain a motion.
Yes, Mayor. I move to adopt ordinance number 8020, rezoning Lot 4, Block 23, Sunrise Park, Unit Number 2, in addition to the City of Amarillo, and Section 106, Block 2, A&M Survey, Potter County, Texas, excuse me, plus 1/2 of all bounding streets, alleys, and public ways to change from Residential District 2 to Residential District 2 with a specific use permit 202 for the placement of a carport within the front yard setback in the vicinity of Southeast 10th Avenue and Inman Drive.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve ordinance number 8020. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with a 4-0 vote. And the last thing on our agenda today is item 3E, consideration of ordinance number 8021. Mr. City Manager.
All right, Mayor, we've got Assistant City Manager Andrew Freeman to present an item amending how we do taxi cab rates or fares, which have not been touched or addressed in quite a long time. So, Andrew, go ahead and present the item.
So probably going to be your quickest item. Just a couple of minor changes. This is the action item from last work session discussion. The only change is that taxi cab companies will be able to now submit a rate chart to the police department when they complete their annual renewal. It will also allow them to make an update every 6 months. That gives them kind of halfway point that if they want to make a change, they're able to do that. And then it's effective 7 days after receipt. So that's really the major changes. We didn't change who's responsible as far as the police department still handles the permits and the annual renewals, and everything else is staying the same. So they'll just be able to set their max fares, and as long as they charge at that rate or below, they'll be in compliance with their permit.
Any questions or Mayor Pro Tem? No? No. Mr. Stanley?
No, ma'am.
I just want to thank the Mayor Pro Tem for the work that she's done to bring this item to a point where we can take action on it today. I know there have been a lot of conversations and a lot of work to bring it here. So thank you too, Andrew, for your help.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
You and your team.
With that, Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to make the
Yes.
motion on that?
Yes, Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 8021, amending the municipal code of the City of Amarillo, Chapter 16-4, Article 3, Division 5, to change taxi fares.
Second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Councilmember Stanley to approve ordinance number 8021. Any discussion or questions about the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, same sign. That passes with the 4-0 vote. And with that, we're at the end of our agenda, and we are hereby adjourned. Thank you all for your time today.